Chapter 1. In the pure white space, a woman wearing a complicated dress stood with her eyes closed. Her face was almost perfect, as if it was carved from jade. Her expression was serious. Not far in front of her, there was a ball of light the size of an adult's head. After an unknown amount of time, the woman's eyelids trembled slightly and she slowly opened her eyes. At first, she was a bit confused, as if she couldn't get used to the huge amount of information that suddenly appeared in her mind, but she quickly became clear. The ball of white light had been silently floating not far in front of her. Seeing her like this, its body suddenly flashed and it actually spoke in a human voice. "Hello, host number 1. I am your partner. You can call me the guide or the system." The woman called number 1 nodded and called out, "System." The 2 words saved a lot of trouble. She had already finished absorbing the information in her mind. At this time, she naturally understood what kind of existence was in front of her and what her mission was. "So my mission is to go to each mission world and become the original female lead. I have to suppress all the supporting female characters who want to replace the female lead as the Destiny's daughter so that the female lead can smoothly complete her originally glorious life." The system's light seemed to flash brighter. "That's right. Now, those supporting female characters who came out of nowhere want to replace the female lead as cannon fodder. They don't know that every world's main character has been approved by the world's laws. Forcefully stripping the Destiny's daughter will only disturb the world's laws and cause the world to become unstable. The consequences can't be seen in a short period of time, but as time passes, the various natural disasters in the world will only be minor. Serious disasters can cause the entire world to collapse. Number 1, your purpose in being created is to protect the female lead's destiny and maintain the stability of the world." The woman nodded and suddenly asked, "The memories in my mind, are they real?" In the memories, she became a woman called Gu Xingyin. She should have lived a life of honor and wealth, but in the end, everything was taken away by an outsider and she died miserably. Even if she had a strong heart, she couldn't stop the hatred and killing intent in her heart. The system replied, "That was an illusory world. I only brought your consciousness into the body of the world's female lead, Gu Xingyin, and experienced a life with her. You are Gu Xingyin, but you are also not Gu Xingyin." The system said, "Number 1 is just a code name. The host can give himself a name." The woman thought for a moment. "I like the name Gu Xingyin very much. Let's go with that." A white light flashed across the system's body. "Alright, I have transferred all the information into your mind. If there are no more questions, we can begin the mission immediately." Number 1, "No," Gu Xingyin nodded. Her smile was a little cold, and she raised her eyebrows. Coupled with her perfect face, she looked even more alluring. "Of course, that's not a problem. It just so happens that I'm also very curious about those people who want to get rid of the female lead." After all, she was still carrying the memories of Gu Xingyin, so she was inevitably affected. She had a kind of rejection and disgust towards those outsiders from the bottom of her heart. The system felt an inexplicable chill. It suddenly wanted to light a candle for those outsiders who were about to face Gu Xingyin. This host didn't seem to be easy to deal with. But then again, after all, she was personally created by that person, prepared to enter the world. 3, 2, 1, Gu Xingyin only felt a wave of dizziness before she lost consciousness. Chapter 2. Princess, the wind is strong here. Your body has just recovered a bit. How about this servant serve you back to rest? A green-clothed servant girl looked earnestly at the girl who was leaning against the railing and looking at the mandarin ducks in the pond. The girl was wearing a snow-white cloak embroidered with silver patterns under the warm spring sun. Her entire body was wrapped tightly from top to bottom. When she heard the voice, she turned her head. Her clothes rubbed against each other, revealing the scarlet palace dress underneath. Following her movements, the large flowers embroidered on the dress seemed to bloom. Gu Xingyin smiled. She wasn't here just to feel the wind, but to wait for the female supporting character of this story to apologize. That's right, the princess that the servant girl spoke of was Gu Xingyin, who had come to complete the first mission. The original female protagonist Jiang Lingzhen's father was the Tianqi dynasty's war god great general. Her mother was the emperor's only sister, Wen City's princess royal. As the only legitimate daughter of the two, Princess Lang Hua, Jiang Lingzhen, not only had a noble status, but she was also a rare beauty. Moreover, she was engaged to the empress's son, the second prince. According to the plot's development, the second prince, as the emperor's legitimate son, was now the crown prince. Jiang Lingzhen would also become the most noble woman in the Tianqi dynasty. However, the crown prince took a fancy to her stepsister, Jiang Yunshan. Jiang Yunshan was the product of the great general's drunken behavior. Her mother was the great general's servant girl. After discovering that she was pregnant, she kept it a secret until Jiang Yunshan was born. After discovering this, the great general was furious and ordered Jiang Yunshan's mother to commit suicide. The princess royal pitied the innocent child and had someone raise her in the palace, making her an awkward concubine's daughter. The original Jiang Yunshan was weak and timid. After reaching marriageable age, the princess royal decided to marry her off to a small official and lived an ordinary life. However, the transmigrated girl was unwilling to live an ordinary life. She deliberately seduced the crown prince, the second prince, and the two secretly had an affair. In the end, after the crown prince ascended the throne, he was apprehensive of the Jiang family's power. He used the excuse of immorality to depose the original princess Lang Hua and sent people to assassinate the great general. He also used a groundless crime to send the entire Jiang family to the border. Even the princess royal of Wen City was imprisoned in the princess royal's residence and died of depression. As for the original female lead, she was humiliated again and again by Jiang Yunshan, who was the favored concubine. Unable to bear the humiliation, she committed suicide. When Gu Xingyin first learned about what had happened to the female lead of this world, her mind went blank for a moment. Too similar. This Jiang Lingzhen and Gu Xingyin had the same noble status. They both met Bao Xinglang and ended up in the same miserable state. The system told her the answer: I chose this world on purpose. You have Gu Xingyin's memories, so it should be easier to complete the mission if you choose a place that you are familiar with in the first world. Gu Xingyin was sitting there, waiting for the original supporting female lead, Jiang Yunshan, to take the bait. 3 days ago, when the original Jiang Lingzhen was playing in the temple fair, she was accidentally bumped by someone and fell down. She hit her head and fainted. The one who woke up was Gu Xingyin. At that time, there were so many people at the temple fair that no one knew how Jiang Lingzhen fell down. Although the great elder princess was angry, she just sent a group of servants to vent her anger. However, at this time, Jiang Yunshan, who had been replaced by the transmigrated girl, ran over to show her sisterly affection. Gu Xingyin, who knew that the culprit of Jiang Lingzhen's fall was Jiang Yunshan, said that she would definitely repay her kindness. Chapter 3. Your Grace, Second Miss is here to visit you. Another maidservant, Hu Zhu, who had been waiting outside the pavilion, came up to report. Gu Xingyin secretly thought, she really came. From a distance, she saw a graceful white figure walking towards her. She is really a little beauty. Gu Xingyin secretly praised her. Jiang Yunshan had willow-shaped eyebrows, almond-shaped eyes, and a face like a hibiscus. She looked delicate and timid. She was indeed a woman who could easily attract men's affection. In contrast, although Jiang Lingzhen was beautiful, she looked like her mother, great elder princess of Wen City. Her phoenix-like eyes were cold and her brows were dignified. Because of her noble status, she had cultivated an inviolable aura since she was a child. She lacked the weakness of a girl. Before Jiang Yunshan could reach Jiang Lingzhen, the tears in her eyes began to fall. Jiang Lingzhen clicked his tongue in amazement as he watched. Younger sister is here to apologize to elder sister. If I had been a little more careful that day, or advised elder sister not to go to that crowded place, perhaps elder sister would not have suffered so much. Jiang Yunshan's face was filled with remorse. Gu Xingyin sneered. It sounded like she cared about Jiang Lingzhen, but in fact, she implied that it was Jiang Lingzhen who insisted on going to the crowded place. She couldn't blame others if she fell down. Jiang Yunshan never made waves without wind. Today, she purposely acted like this. She must be doing it for someone to see. Gu Xingyin looked at Jiang Yunshan coldly. She just sat still and didn't say anything. Don't you want to act? I'll let you act as much as you want. Jiang Yunshan originally just came here to pretend. She didn't expect that Jiang Lingzhen would really ignore her. Jiang Yunshan glared at Jiang Lingzhen with resentment. She accidentally glanced at the red dress on Jiang Lingzhen and was jealous for a moment. That was this year's tribute, flowing light brocade. Except for the Empress and Empress Dowager's palace, only Great Elder Princess got one. At this moment, Jiang Lingzhen was wearing it. She had already acted, so she couldn't give up halfway. She had to work hard to wipe her eyes. Her poor pair of eyes were rubbed red. It was really red and swollen. When Jiang Yunshan almost couldn't bear it anymore, the person she was waiting for finally appeared. What's going on? A young man's voice sounded. The owner of the voice was wearing a jade crown on his head. His white robe was spotless, and there was a jade belt around his waist. He looked like an elegant and noble young master. It was Jiang Lingzhen's fiancé, the crown prince of the Tianqi dynasty, Ji Yi. Your Highness. Gu Xingyin stood up and bowed. Ji Yi quickly reached out to help Gu Xingyin up. Cousin, you don't have to be so polite. You and I are cousins, and we are engaged. There's really no need to be so formal. Ji Yi was very satisfied with his cousin's fiancée. Her background was good, and her looks were even better. Who in the imperial city didn't envy the crown prince's luck with women? Yunshan greets cousin. When Jiang Yunshan saw that the crown prince didn't even look at her, she couldn't help but grit her teeth and call out tenderly. Only then did Ji Yi notice Jiang Yunshan. He was a bit impatient at first, but when he saw Jiang Yunshan's pitiful appearance, his expression softened. You are. Jiang Yunshan gently bowed. Her neck was slightly bent, revealing her creamy skin. This concubine is the young miss of the great general's residence. I am ranked second. Jiang Yunshan's original body was as timid as a mouse. When she saw the crown prince, she would hide far away. How could she have the chance to see him? The crown prince frowned and thought for a while. Oh, so it's the great general's maidservant's daughter. Gu Xingyin looked at Jiang Yunshan with a smile. Her face became very interesting. Chapter 4. Gu Xingyin knew that Jiang Yunshan came from a different world and was very sensitive to her identity as a concubine's daughter. In the original plot, she had the emperor change her birth to a noble one after she had the 6 concubines. It was as if that would really make her superior. Gu Xingyin's mission in this world was to prevent Jiang Lingzhen's tragic fate and make her the most noble woman in Tianqi dynasty. In order to do this, Jiang Yunshan, the biggest hidden danger, could not be left alive. Before that, Jiang Lingzhen did not mind letting her have a taste of being looked down upon. After all, in the original plot, Jiang Lingzhen was humiliated by her and committed suicide. Jiang Yunshan's hands, which were hidden in her sleeves, were bleeding from her fingernails. However, her face was filled with tears. Yunshan knows that her status is low and cannot bear to be associated with cousin Crown Prince. However, Yunshan admires cousin Crown Prince's majesty and could not help herself. If there is any disrespect, cousin Crown Prince, please forgive me. After she finished speaking, she covered her face and planned to leave. The Crown Prince had always been a person who had tender feelings for the fairer sex. How could he endure this beauty's tears? What's more, Jiang Yunshan was a beautiful woman who had her entire heart and eyes filled with him. The crown prince only felt that his pride as a man had been greatly satisfied. He quickly stopped Jiang Yunshan and coaxed her to stay with a smile. Gu Xingyin watched this farce from the side and thought to herself, how could such an idiot become the crown prince? Since her mission was to become the most noble woman in Tianqi dynasty, then in order to not make herself too disgusted, it would be better for the position of the most noble man to be changed to someone else. On the other side, the crown prince asked Jiang Yunshan what she had been doing. Jiang Yunshan took the opportunity to tell him what had happened. As expected, the crown prince immediately looked at Gu Xingyin with disapproval. Cousin Yunshan, the matter of you falling down was not Cousin Yunshan's fault. She is pure and kind and has personally come to apologize. Why are you so calculative? Gu Xingyin hated men like the crown prince who lost his principles when he saw a beauty. Gu Xingyin met such a man and ended up in such a miserable state. She lazily looked at her round and glossy nails and said, Your Highness, the crown prince's words are very strange. I was just sitting here and looking at the scenery. My Shu sister ran over to complain without any explanation. I just woke up from a coma and my mind is groggy, so I don't understand what she is doing. She glanced at Jiang Yunshan, but seeing Crown Prince come over, I kind of understand. She did not want to see this pair, so she simply held her head in her hands. Her hand and the maid, Hu Zhu and Lin Lang, who had been standing to the side, immediately came over with a nervous expression on their faces. Princess, do you feel unwell? Let me go take a rest, go back and rest. Let me help me go back to rest. After she finished speaking, she nodded at the two and left with the help of the two maids. Ji Yi looked at her pale face. Compared to her usual awe-inspiring appearance, there was a hint of gentleness, which added to her charm. His heart moved and he wanted to follow her. Suddenly, a cry of "Io" came from the side. He turned around and saw Nuanyu and Wenxiang hugging him. Gu Xingyin heard the movement behind her and her lips curled into a mocking smile. Chapter 5. Your Highness, His Highness the Crown Prince has gone too far today. Back in the bedroom, the outspoken Lin Lang said angrily. Your Highness, you are the Crown Prince's fiancé. How could he side with her? Jiang Lingzhen's maids were all personally selected by Princess Royal of Wen City. Naturally, they did not have a good impression of Jiang Yunshan, who was born after climbing into her master's bed. Second young miss usually looks quiet and quiet. I didn't expect her to be so secretive. Hu Zhu, who was on the side, also said. Gu Xingyin let them speak, but in the end, she said, It's fine if you're here, but don't mention this outside. Hu Zhu and Lin Lang looked at Gu Xingyin's expression to make sure that she was not affected by what had just happened. Only then did they feel relieved and replied with a smile, Don't worry, we know our limits when we're outside. Gu Xingyin lay down, and Hu Zhu considerately put down the curtain outside and left. The room was quiet for a moment. System. Gu Xingyin called out in her heart. What do you want? The system appeared in front of Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin asked, My task is to let Jiang Lingzhen continue her original fate and become the most honorable woman in this dynasty. Then, the Jiang family cannot fall. With the current crown prince's personality, the best way to protect the Jiang family is to rely on the Jiang family's power and support a new crown prince. Is this considered disrupting the order of the world? The system's white light flashed for a while before Gu Xingyin heard its answer, This method is workable. In this world, only the female lead is destined, but not the male lead. Host, you only need to complete the task, and the process can be done as you wish. After receiving the system's reply, Gu Xingyin began to feel relieved. She silently thought about which of the other princes of the emperor would be easier to promote to the throne. The third prince was the son of imperial concubine Shu, and he was backed by the Duke Cheng's mansion. Even if he ascended the throne in the future, the Jiang family would not have a good ending. The sixth prince was slow-witted by nature, and he was not good at literature or martial arts. He was not capable of anything. The seventh prince was disabled and had no chance to ascend the throne. The rest of the princes were still too young. Gu Xingyin was a little distressed. He counted them one by one, but none of them met the requirements. Wait a minute. Gu Xingyin's eyes lit up. How could she forget that person? In terms of legitimacy, that person was even more reasonable than the second prince. Gu Xingyin, who had solved the problem in her heart, felt relieved, but her head was still aching. After all, she had just recovered from her injuries, so she quickly fell into a deep sleep. Wen City's grand princess sat on a chair. She looked to be in her early 30s and had maintained herself well. Her phoenix eyes gave off a dignified aura and her bright face was currently covered in frost. There was a person kneeling on the ground, reporting what had happened in the pavilion today. She's usually so honest, but I didn't expect her to make a mistake. She's just like the woman who gave birth to her. She's used to pretending. At night, the Grand Princess told the Grand General about this matter. The Grand Princess and the Grand General had a very good relationship. All these years, there had been no concubines in the residence. The only variable was Jiang Yunshan. As expected, the Grand General was furious when he heard about this. Jiang Lingzhen was his and Wen City's only child. She had always been his treasure, the pearl in his palm. I'm very worried about marrying Zhen to the Crown Prince. With the Crown Prince's personality, Zhen will definitely suffer a lot in the future. Wen City's Grand Princess said. The Grand General deeply agreed. Originally, they were not willing to let Zhen marry into the imperial family. Zhen's marriage to the Crown Prince was decided verbally by the Empress when Zhen was born. There was no actual decree. Now that they thought about it, they could make a fuss about it. What Gu Xingyin didn't know was that before she could think of a plan, her parents were already discussing how to separate her from the Crown Prince. Chapter 6. Jiang Lingzhen sat in the carriage and looked outside through the gap between the shaking of the carriage. Princess Royal of Wen City was a Buddhist. This time, her daughter met with such a disaster, so she still had a knot in her heart. This time, taking advantage of Jiang Lingzhen's good health, she immediately took her daughter to the most famous temple in the Tianqi dynasty, Hidden Dragon Temple, to worship. Gu Xingyin was naturally happy. The Hidden Dragon Temple was very beautiful. Even if she had nothing to do, she could still visit it. Not to mention, this time, Gu Xingyin wanted to see the legendary person in the Hidden Dragon Temple. Jiang Yunshan's carriage followed behind. She didn't know what method she used to persuade Princess Royal of Wen City, who had always ignored her, to follow them to the Hidden Dragon Temple. Jiang Yunshan naturally had her own purpose. In the original story, the Crown Prince and Jiang Lingzhen had fallen in love in the Hidden Dragon Temple. Now that she had a good impression of the Crown Prince, she couldn't let Jiang Lingzhen have a chance to get close to the Crown Prince. Jiang Yunshan's index finger touched a little cold. She touched the smooth jade bottle in her sleeve and a smile appeared on her face. After Jiang Lingzhen followed Princess Royal of Wen City to worship the Buddha, she told Princess Royal of Wen City that she wanted to get some fresh air. Then, she took her two maids, Hu Zhu and Lin Lang, to the back of the mountain. She was familiar with the plot of this world. Naturally, she knew that there was an extraordinary Buddhist living in the Hidden Dragon Temple. He was the legitimate son of the emperor, the real legitimate eldest prince, Ji Yu. In terms of identity, there was no other prince who could be more valuable than Ji Yu. However, not long after Ji Yu was born, Empress Yuan passed away due to illness. Therefore, the emperor thought that this son would bring bad karma to his family, so he didn't like him. Ji Yu grew up in the palace until he was 10 years old. Then, the emperor used the excuse of praying for the good of the world and banished him to the Hidden Dragon Temple. In the original story, this legitimate eldest prince didn't appear in many scenes. He was really like a Buddhist living quietly in the hidden dragon temple. Gu Xingyin ordered Hu Zhu and Lin Lang to follow them from a distance, while she slowly enjoyed the scenery in the temple's backyard. Although she had Gu Xingyin's memories, she could only be considered as a spectator. She had never truly experienced what Gu Xingyin had experienced and seen. The scenery behind the hidden dragon temple was so enchanting that Gu Xingyin was momentarily distracted. Hu Zhu and Lin Lang looked at their princess from afar as if she had never left the house before. She stopped here and looked there. They thought that their princess was bored for a long time. It was rare for her to go out, so she was more excited than usual. Gu Xingyin was curious, but she did not forget her task. She slowly walked towards her destination. She remembered that Ji Yu's small courtyard was in an extremely hidden bamboo forest in the back of the mountain. As she walked inside, the surroundings became quieter. Gu Xingyin could only hear the sound of the wind blowing the bamboo leaves around and the echo of her own footsteps. Lin Lang pulled Hu Zhu's sleeve. "Sister Hu Zhu, why don't we persuade the princess to go back? This place is so quiet." Hu Zhu looked at Gu Xingyin, who was obviously in high spirits, and shook her head slightly. "It's rare for the princess to be so happy. Let's not be a wet blanket. The hidden dragon temple is an important place of Buddhism. There won't be anyone who dares to make trouble here." Gu Xingyin walked in the bamboo forest. She was curious, what kind of person could live in such a place for more than 10 years? Chapter 7. Gu Xingyin finally saw the small courtyard hidden in the bamboo forest. To be precise, it should be called a bamboo house. Gu Xingyin looked around but did not see anyone. She thought that Ji Yu was either in the bamboo house or somewhere else. Although the emperor did not imprison his eldest son, he never allowed him to leave the hidden dragon temple. It could be regarded as a disguised form of confinement. "Greetings, young lady." Gu Xingyin was stunned, and a clear voice came from behind her. She turned her head slightly. The moment she saw the person, her eyes widened slightly. This man, his appearance was really... Gu Xingyin did not know how to describe it. Perhaps because he lived in the temple for many years, the eldest son of the emperor did not look like a person of the secular world. Ji Yu was only a secluded cultivator, so he did not need to shave his head. His long hair was tied up with a green hair band, and he was wearing a green robe without any decorations. There were no patterns on his robe, but it made people feel that no luxurious clothes made of pearls and jade would be more suitable for him than this. He stood in front of Gu Xingyin, holding a peach blossom that had just been plucked from the branch in his hand, and bowed his head to greet her with a warm smile. "Greetings, young lady." Gu Xingyin vaguely remembered the illusion of Buddha's smile when he picked up a flower. Ji Yu's smile was quite refined and free from the secular world. She came to her senses and bowed with a smile. "I came to the hidden dragon temple with my family to fulfill a vow. I came out to take a breath of fresh air and was attracted by the beautiful scenery in the mountain. I unconsciously came here and felt a little tired. May I ask for a cup of water from you?" Ji Yu and Ji Yi looked somewhat similar, which was why Gu Xingyin could recognize Ji Yu at a glance. Hearing Gu Xingyin's words, Ji Yu was slightly stunned, and then smiled. "Young lady, please follow me." He led Gu Xingyin to the bamboo building. After entering the building, Gu Xingyin discovered that the bamboo building had an independent courtyard. There was a man-made vine frame to shade the courtyard from the sun. It was a rather interesting place. Hu Zhu and Lin Lang had already walked to Gu Xingyin's side. Ji Yu invited Gu Xingyin to sit down and entered the room herself. When he came out, there was a pot of tea in his hand. Gu Xingyin thanked him and raised his hand to take it. "Miss." Hu Zhu reminded her in a low voice. "This thing of unknown origin should not be eaten casually." Gu Xingyin smiled carelessly and took a sip of the tea. Gu Xingyin exclaimed, "Good tea." Ji Yu smiled faintly. "It's just an insignificant skill. It's not worthy of praise from the young lady." Gu Xingyin thought, "If I don't do this, how can I continue to communicate with you?" Thus, Gu Xingyin began to chat with Ji Yu through this tea ceremony. Unexpectedly, the two of them were quite congenial. Originally, Gu Xingyin only approached Ji Yu with a purpose. However, after chatting, she found that Ji Yu had a similar point of view as her on many things. This made her very surprised. Unknowingly, the two of them talked for more than half an hour. When they were resting, Hu Zhu reminded Gu Xingyin in a low voice that it was time to go back. Gu Xingyin's eyes were sparkling. She looked at Ji Yu with unsatisfied eyes. "It's rare to find a bosom friend in life. It's really a blessing to meet you today." Ji Yu was also in high spirits, but he only said to her, "This bamboo building is located in a remote area. Shall I send you out?" Gu Xingyin and her servants followed the path that Ji Yu took. When they passed through a dense forest, they suddenly heard a strange sound. The sound was intermittent, mixed with a hint of coquettishness. Hu Zhu and Lin Lang blushed on the spot. Chapter 8. Gu Xingyin blushed at first. Even though she had not experienced it herself, everyone present knew what it meant. But soon, Gu Xingyin's face turned pale. She could tell that the two voices were strangely familiar. At that moment, she couldn't care less about her shyness and looked in that direction. This glance made her face turn pale. The woman whose dress was half open and whose shoulders were slightly exposed was her stepsister, Jiang Yunshan. And the man who was leaning over her body was the crown prince, Ji Yi, who was verbally betrothed to her. Ji Yu looked at Gu Xingyin. The woman in front of him looked like she had suffered a huge blow. Her expression was miserable and her body was on the verge of collapse. He couldn't help but feel a sense of pity. Ignoring etiquette, he supported her and asked, "Do you know these two people?" She did not know if it was an illusion, but Gu Xingyin felt that there was a faint lotus fragrance on Ji Yu's body. This was not the season for lotus flowers to bloom. Hearing Ji Yu's question, Gu Xingyin only bit her lips and shook her head slightly. Seeing this, Ji Yu did not ask any more questions. He gestured to the two women behind him who were also shocked. The few of them quietly retreated. The few of them walked in silence. Ji Yu sent them all the way to the exit of the back mountain. At this time, Gu Xingyin's expression had returned to normal. She bowed to Ji Yu. "Many thanks, sir." Ji Yu saw that although her expression was calm, her eyes were somewhat erratic. He knew that she must be in a daze at this moment. He did not say much. The few of them exchanged a few words and said their goodbyes. Returning to the bamboo house, Ji Yu closed the door. The expression on his face changed. His facial features were extremely good, and he usually had an indifferent expression that stood aloof from worldly affairs, making people feel that he was a banished immortal who enjoyed a picnic in the clouds of the immortal mountain. However, at this moment, that benevolent and tolerant smile was hidden, and a pair of gentle eyes actually revealed a piercingly cold killing intent. "Go and find out who the woman who came today is. Also, who is the woman who had an illicit relationship with my second brother?" His voice was cold and hard, without a trace of emotion. An almost undetectable "yes" came from the corner. Then, as if a cool breeze had brushed past, the bamboo building returned to silence. Ji Yu poured herself a cup of tea and sat on the rattan chair, sipping slowly. He remembered that he had met the woman during the day. In fact, before Gu Xingyin came to the bamboo house, he had already noticed her and was attracted to her eyes. She was not pretending to be innocent and ignorant of the world. Her eyes revealed a genuine curiosity towards everything. He watched as she exclaimed at the sight of a strange-looking grass and was startled by a small bug that suddenly jumped out of the flowers. Then, she observed the bug with great interest. Of course, Ji Yu saw all this from her eyes. Gu Xingyin did not act out of line from the beginning to the end. Even her face maintained the perfect appearance of a noble lady. It was this contrast that piqued Ji Yu's interest. Of course, he did not know that this phenomenon, in a distant world, had a name called contrast mo. He was cold by nature and was thrown into this place by his biological father to live alone for more than 10 years. He had long developed a calm temperament. There were very few people or things that could cause ripples in his heart. Gu Xingyin was one of them. However, looking at her reaction today, it seemed to have something to do with his second brother. Ji Yu frowned. Chapter 9. Gu Xingyin and her servants were in a daze. Junju. Hu Zhu looked worriedly at Gu Xingyin. Although outsiders did not know about the engagement between the princess and the crown prince, they, who had served the princess since she was young, knew very well about it. What the crown prince and Jiang Yunshan had done today was like a slap to Jiang Lingzhen's face. Gu Xingyin's face was still a bit pale. With the original Jiang Lingzhen's personality, she wouldn't have told her parents about this matter. She would have even ordered her servants not to reveal it. She, Gu Xingyin, wasn't willing to do that. Why should she let that adulterous couple take advantage of her? When City's eldest princess saw that her precious daughter's expression wasn't right. Zhen, what's wrong? Did you encounter something unhappy outside? When City's eldest princess had a pained expression. Jiang Lingzhen saw her mother and her previously suppressed emotions exploded. She threw herself into Wen City's eldest princess' arms and cried. Wen City's eldest princess panicked. She had always been noble and dignified outside, but she loved her only daughter, Jiang Lingzhen, to the bone. She was like a pearl in her palm. Moreover, Zhen had always restrained her emotions. When had she ever cried like this? But no matter how she coaxed, Gu Xingyin only cried and wouldn't say anything. Gu Xingyin naturally wouldn't say anything. The more aggrieved she acted, the angrier Wen City's eldest princess would be. Although this was taking advantage of Wen City's eldest princess's love for her daughter, when she thought about the fate of the original Jiang Lingzhen and the Jiang family, Gu Xingyin could only force herself to harden her heart. The two of you went out with the princess today. What exactly happened? Wen City's eldest princess shot a sharp gaze at Hu Zhu and Lin Lang. Hu Zhu and Lin Lang naturally didn't dare to hide anything. They knelt on the ground in fear and trembled as they recounted what happened between the second prince and the second miss. Bastard! Wen City's eldest princess didn't know if she was scolding the second prince or Jiang Yunshan, simply going too far. Never in her wildest dreams had she imagined that it would happen right under her nose in this tranquil place of Buddhism. The two of them actually did such a despicable thing. Zhen. Princess Wenqing gently pulled up Gu Xingyin, who was buried in her arms. Tell me, do you like the second prince or not? Gu Xingyin was stunned for a while. Her confused eyes and red nose made her look very pitiful. She shook her head and said softly, I don't know either. The original Jiang Lingzhen liked the second prince, but that was only after the wedding. Now, Jiang Lingzhen's feelings for the second prince were still vague. If it was Gu Xingyin, it would be even more impossible for her to have a good impression of such a scumbag. Seeing her like this, Wen City's eldest princess felt relieved. His daughter clearly hadn't fallen in love with him yet. The reason why she was so aggrieved today was probably because she felt that the second prince's actions had greatly hurt her reputation. She breathed a sigh of relief. This was much easier to handle. If Zhen really fell in love with the second prince, she would have to spend a lot of effort to persuade her daughter. Anyway, the second prince was definitely not a good match. She straightened up and ordered the maid to bring hot water. Then she turned to Gu Xingyin, who was still in a daze, and said, Zhen, look at me. Gu Xingyin looked at her with some confusion. You are the daughter of great elder princess, the only legitimate daughter of the general, and the Infanta Lang Hua, who was personally conferred by the emperor. Princess Wen City's eldest princess looked at her proudly and said, "You can proudly raise your head at any time. People like the second prince and Jiang Yunshan are not worth your tears." Chapter 10. At the same time, a report was placed in front of Ji Yu. Ji Yu took the lead and picked up Gu Xingyin's report. "So her name is Jiang Lingjun, Aunt Wen City's daughter." Jiang Lingjun. Ji Yu muttered this name several times. Ever since he was exiled to the Hidden Dragon Temple, everyone in the imperial clan avoided him. Wen City's eldest princess was one of the few people who cared about him. Towards this senior, Ji Yu was still somewhat grateful in her heart. Ji Yu saw a line of words in front of him. She was engaged to the second prince when she was young. Ji Yu couldn't help but think of the girl who laughed and chatted with him in the bamboo forest. It was a pity to marry someone like Ji Yi. However, since he had made up his mind, this engagement was destined to be impossible. Ji Yu reached out and picked up another report. It was about Jiang Yunshan. The bastard born of this servant seduced her own sister's fiancé's woman. Ji Yu's palm tightened and Jiang Yunshan's report seemed to be crushed by an invisible force. "Since you want to climb into my good second brother's bed so much, I'll have to help you." Ji Yu smiled meaningfully. He clapped his hands in the dark and a black shadow appeared from the corner and knelt in front of Ji Yu. "Do something for me." Wen City's eldest princess came back from the Hidden Dragon Temple and went straight to the general's room. "There's such a thing." The general was shocked and angry. He didn't have any impression of his daughter Jiang Yunshan. When he and Wen City were in love, Jiang Yunshan's mother climbed into his bed while he was drunk. After that, although Wen City's eldest princess said she didn't care, he always felt that he owed his wife and couldn't bring himself to like Jiang Yunshan. Unfilial daughter. "I want to punish you." The general was furious. "Wait a moment." Wen City's eldest princess stopped the furious general. "Punishing Jiang Yunshan is a small matter. The most important thing now is how to cancel the engagement between Ah Zhen and the crown prince. Ah Zhen is about to reach marriageable age. If the empress decrees a marriage at that time, I don't want Ah Zhen to marry a man who slept with his fiancé's stepsister." "You're right." The general calmed down. The couple began to think about how to bring up this matter with the royal family. Who would have thought that the royal family would send an edict before they could even come up with a plan? Long live the emperor. Wen City's grand princess and the grand general bowed to the emperor. "Rise." Sheng the emperor, who was sitting on the dragon throne, felt a bit awkward. Looking at his sister Wen Cheng's face, he felt that he couldn't say what he wanted to say. "The empress and I have had the same dream every night recently." The emperor pondered for a while and decided to get straight to the point. Princess Royal of Wen City and the general looked at each other. What did dreaming have to do with them? What the emperor said next shocked them. "One day, the sun will set from the east and descend upon the eastern palace." The eastern palace was the residence of the crown prince. The general said, "Congratulations, your majesty. This is an auspicious call." However, the emperor's next words gave the general and his wife a fright. "Another moon has come from the west mountain and hangs in the Qing manor." Wen City's eldest princess' heart skipped a beat. What did the emperor mean? The arrival of the sun and moon was an auspicious sign. If the crown prince of the eastern palace was the sun, then who was the moon in his residence? After thinking it over, the most suitable candidate was Ah Zhen. The eldest princess broke out in a cold sweat at her own thoughts. The people of this era believed in gods and Buddhas and revered this kind of thing. If Ah Zhen's body carried this omen, then no matter what, her marriage with the crown prince couldn't be cancelled. Chapter 11. Wen City's eldest princess looked at her husband and found that the general's eyes were also filled with shock. This matter came too suddenly and caught the husband and wife unprepared. Princess Royal of One City took a deep breath and forced a smile. Could it be that your majesty has been too tired recently and is hallucinating? This was practically a blatant questioning of the current era. No matter what, Princess Royal of One City could not watch her daughter fall into the fire pit that was the East Palace. The emperor immediately glared at his younger sister. I'm not old enough to see things clearly. Besides, the empress has had the same dream these days. Could it be that the empress is also hallucinating because of overwork? It was only because she was his only blood-related sister that the emperor let her off so easily. If it were anyone else, it would be a crime of disrespect to question the emperor. Princess Royal of One City and the general looked at the emperor's confident expression and felt a chill in their hearts. Princess Royal of One City forced a smile when she saw the emperor looking at them. She did not lose her composure and said, "What do you plan to do, your majesty?" It was the emperor's turn to hesitate. He looked at his younger sister with a rare apologetic look on his face. Princess Royal and her husband saw his expression and panicked. Could it be that there was a change in this matter? It was rare for the emperor to be so embarrassed. He looked at his sister and said, "One City, there's something I haven't told you. No matter what, as a princess of the royal family, you have to know that any decision I make is for the good of the royal family." Princess Royal of One City panicked. "Brother, what's the matter?" In a moment of desperation, she even called him by the title he used many years ago. The place where Chiuea lived in our dreams was not the secluded bamboo yard where your daughter Jeanne lived. It was a yard called Begonia Yard. I've made a decision. On the 8th of next month, the crown prince will welcome your concubine's daughter into the mansion as a concubine. The emperor deeply felt that this decision was unfair to Princess Royal of One City and the general. He knew about the engagement between the crown prince and Princess Langhua, Jiang Lingzhen. Now, the crown prince was going to welcome his concubine's sister into the mansion. In the Tianqi dynasty, there had never been a precedent of a sister serving the same husband. Besides, it was a humiliation to Jiang Lingzhen. In this way, the engagement between Jiang Lingzhen and the crown prince was bound to be cancelled. One City's grand princess was stunned. The emperor thought that his news was hard for her to accept, but he didn't know that she wasn't upset, but pleasantly surprised. The heavens really took pity on him. One City's grand princess was pleasantly surprised. She never thought that just a moment ago, she was still worried about her daughter's fate, and in the next second, she would receive such good news. Moreover, the marriage contract that had troubled her for a long time had been resolved. When she came back to her senses, she heard the emperor continue. "I know that this matter has wronged Jeanne. I watched her grow up, and I doted on her so much. I have always hoped that she could marry into our imperial family. Sigh, this time, it is our imperial family that has let her down. Tomorrow, I will issue an edict to grant Jeanne the title of Princess Qingyang. Your fief, the Qingyang county near Wen City, will be bestowed to her." Wen City's eldest princess was a little dizzy from this big persimmon. Bestowing land? The infanta of this dynasty did not have the right to be enfeoffed. Even the princesses had to be enfeoffed based on how much they were favored. Wen City's grand princess was the former emperor's legitimate daughter, and the current emperor's biological sister. Because of this honor, she was given her own fief. She didn't expect the imperial family to be so generous in compensating her. A princess with a fief was much more honorable than a princess of the royal family. Chapter 12. The emperor saw that the eldest princess and her husband had no objection, so he felt even more guilty. The next day, he gave Gu Xingyin an even more generous reward. The eldest princess and her husband returned home happily. When the eldest princess returned home, she called her daughter and told her what the emperor had told her today. After that, the eldest princess of Wen City carefully looked at her daughter's expression. She saw that her daughter was happy and not disappointed, so she was completely relieved. She was afraid that Zhen couldn't bear to give up the noble status of crown princess. She couldn't think straight and entered the deep palace where people could eat people without blinking. Princess Royal of one city had grown up in the palace since she was a child. She knew a lot about the tricks in the harem. Gu Xingyin was naturally happy. She was worried about how to get rid of the engagement with Ji Yi. She didn't expect that this would happen. However, this didn't happen in the original plot. Gu Xingyin called the system. The system flashed and replied, checking. Unable to check. Maybe the world's laws automatically filled in. There is no abnormal situation. Please carry out the task as usual. Well, Gu Xingyin saw that she couldn't get the answer, so she didn't bother about this matter. This is too convenient for Jiang Yunshan. Princess Wencheng said angrily. It was already a great honor for a concubine's daughter to marry the crown prince as a concubine. The eldest princess didn't doubt that with this auspicious omen, if Jiang Yunshan's family background was not so bad, there was no way to shut the mouth of the officials in the imperial court. Otherwise, the imperial family would have directly promoted her to the crown princess. Gu Xingyin blinked. Convenient? That was not necessarily true. After all, Ji Yi and Jiang Yunshan were the main culprits of the Jiang family's destruction. In this life, since she had taken Jiang Lingzhen's body, she naturally had to repay them well. On the other side, Ji Yu took the report from her subordinate and smiled gently. I have lived in the Hidden Dragon Temple for a long time. I don't know if those old friends still remember me. The next day, 2 imperial edicts from the palace shocked the entire imperial city. Both of the edicts were related to the general's mansion. One of them was Princess Lang Hua of the great general's residence. She was granted the title of Princess Qin Yang by the emperor's personal decree and was granted the fief of Qinyang County. Jiang Lingzhen, Princess Lang Hua and now Princess Qinyang, became the first princess to have her own fief since the founding of the Tianqi dynasty. The second decree was even more confusing. The general's concubine's daughter was going to be the crown prince's concubine. What was the status of the crown prince? The future master of the Apocalypse dynasty. Secondary concubines were different from other concubines. They had status and could be listed on the Imperial Jade Archive. Generally speaking, the crown prince's concubines were the legitimate daughters of the top aristocratic families. How could a concubine like Jiang Yunshan become the crown prince's concubine? Many people had this doubt in their hearts. Jiang Yunshan had been too low-key in the past. In the imperial city, many people only knew that the Grand General had an extremely favored legitimate daughter, Princess Lang Hua. As for the concubine's daughter, Jiang Yunshan, who was she? He had never even heard of it. In Jiang Yunshan's small courtyard, Jiang Yunshan raised her chin proudly as she listened to the continuous congratulations and compliments from the servants. She glanced in the direction of the east courtyard, where Jiang Lingzhen lived in the secluded yellow bamboo courtyard. She sneered in her heart, so what if she's the legitimate daughter? So what if she's a princess? In the end, she's still not the legitimate daughter. Even her fiancé is one of my people. She looked at the crimson butterfly embroidered dress she was wearing. This was a tribute from the palace. If it was the Jiang Yunshan of the past, she wouldn't even dare to think about it. No rush, take it slow. Jiang Lingzhen, I will take what you have little by little. I will let you have a taste of what it's like to have nothing. Chapter 13. System, have you finished sorting out the accounts of the innocent women Crown Prince Ji Yi has harmed over the years, as well as his dealings with the aristocratic families? Gu Xingyin asked. System, according to the host's request, all the information has been prepared. The system was indeed a huge cheat. Gu Xingyin flipped through the information in her mind. These things were tightly controlled by the Crown Prince's faction. If she were to use manpower to search for them, who knows how long it would take to gather them. But the system only needed to scan them. To Gu Xingyin, there were no secrets in this world. That's good. These things were enough to make the crown prince unable to make a comeback. Ruining women was enough to incite the anger of the people. And the emperor, who was still in his prime, would not tolerate a crown prince who colluded and harmed the interests of the dynasty. However, these things would have to wait for the right opportunity to be used. Gu Xingyin felt relieved. As long as Ji Yi fell, Jiang Yunshan would not have a good life. Her task would be half complete. As for the other half, Gu Xingyin could not help but think of the person in the bamboo forest. Her nose seemed to smell the faint fragrance of lotus flowers. "Princess, are we really going to do this?" Hu Zhu asked nervously. Lin Lang was excited. Gu Xingyin smiled at her. "It's not like we're doing anything shameful. Don't worry, I'll talk to mother." She had changed out of her usual elegant and beautiful palace attire and into a close-fitting Hu robe. That's right, Gu Xingyin had made an appointment with a few of his close friends to go hunting today. The Tianqi dynasty was founded on martial arts. Not to mention the commoners, most of the aristocratic women were proficient in horseback archery. Hunting on horseback was also a common activity. Ever since he fell down at the temple fair, Princess Royal of one city did not allow Jiang Lingzhen to leave the residence alone. In other words, ever since Gu Xingyin came to this world, he had not left the residence except for that one time when he followed Princess Royal of one city to the Hidden Dragon Temple. As a created human, Gu Xingyin said that although she had the system in hand, and her musical, chess, calligraphy, and painting abilities were perfect, she had never practiced them. She was looking forward to this mounted archery competition. After changing her clothes, Gu Xingyin asked her two personal maidservants to wait on her, while she went to settle the matter of leaving the mansion. She didn't go to Princess Royal's room. Instead, she went to the general's room. Compared to the Princess Royal who was occasionally strict with her daughter, the general who was obedient to Jiang Lingzhen was obviously easier to deal with. Sure enough, with a blink of her wet eyes and a pout of her pink and tender lips, as well as a sweet father, the general, who had always been known for his cold-bloodedness, was immediately defeated. He even personally sent his daughter to the gate of the mansion. He was the one who taught Jiang Lingzhen how to ride a horse. After watching his daughter leave with a smile on her face, the general put away his fatherly smile and instructed someone in the dark, "Follow the princess well. Don't let anyone who doesn't have eyes hurt her." Yes. When Princess Royal of one city received the news, Gu Xingyin had already left. "Is she worried that I won't agree? She even deliberately hid it from me." Princess Royal didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She put on a serious face and said, "When the princess comes back, have her come to my room. Let's see how I take care of her." The mama who had been following behind Princess Royal of one city secretly complained, "Princess, can you restrain the smile in your eyes a bit before saying this?" Chapter 14. Ah Zhen. Seeing Gu Xingyin coming, several young ladies who were chatting in the distance waved at her. Gu Xingyin urged his horse over. Sure enough, everyone was wearing the same Hu attire as Gu Xingyin. Not far away, several strong and valiant horses were quietly grazing with their heads lowered. "I haven't seen you for a long time." The one who spoke was the Duke of Danyang County. He was one of Jiang Lingzhen's best friends. He was also one of the few people who knew about the marriage between Jiang Lingzhen and the crown prince. "I was thrown down last time. Mother doesn't allow me to go out." Gu Xingyin replied with a smile. He had a very good impression of this girl with a bright smile. In the original plot, after Jiang Lingzhen was in trouble, she was the only one who did not abandon Jiang Lingzhen and wholeheartedly wanted to save her from the cage. The Duke of Danyang County saw Jiang Lingzhen's bright smile without a trace of gloominess. After hearing that Jiang Yunshan was taken as a concubine, he was relieved. "Let's go. My father found me a good horse from the western region a few days ago. Today I will show you." The Duke of Danyang County laughed. The group of young ladies rode their horses and galloped into the distance. The horse of the county magistrate of Danyang County was indeed 1 in 1,000. She quickly left the others far behind. The only one who could keep up with her was Gu Xingyin. Zhen, let's not care about them. I will secretly take you to a good place. The Duke of Danyang County said excitedly to Gu Xingyin. Gu Xing's interest was piqued by being chased. He ignored Hu Zhu's call and followed the county lord of Danyang County, disappearing without a trace. Oh no! As they ran, Gu Xingyin found that something was wrong. The horse under her was showing signs of going crazy. There was something wrong with the horse. Danyang! Something is wrong with my horse. Gu Xingyin shouted to Danyang. Danyang was shocked when he heard this. He looked in Gu Xingyin's direction and his expression changed immediately. Zhen, calm down. I'll go over slowly. The county lord of Danyang County steered his horse closer to Liangzhen, intending to pull Gu Xingyin onto his horse when the time came. Who knew that Gu Xingyin's horse was not in its right mind? When it saw other horses approaching, it raised its hind legs and kicked them fiercely. Hiss! The horse of Danyang County's county magistrate cried out in pain. Fortunately, it still remembered its master and tried its best not to fall. However, it refused to get close to Gu Xingyin's horse again. When County Princess Danyang finally calmed down, Gu Xingyin had already disappeared. Zhen! Danyang panicked. If something happened to Zhen, Gu Xingyin was not having a good time. She did not know what stimulated the horse, but it only knew how to gallop. She was being jolted, and sometimes the leaves by the roadside would hit her body. It hurt. System. Gu Xingyin called out to the system in his mind. What's going on? The system replied, the ingredients of hallucinogens were detected from the horse you were riding. Gu Xingyin's expression turned cold. So, it was done by someone. The system replied, this was in the original plot. Did the host forget? Gu Xingyin recalled. Yes, the transmigrator Jiang Yunshan had poisoned Jiang Lingzhen's horse once. That time, Jiang Lingzhen fell from the horse and broke his left arm. He had to rest for half a year. But wasn't that 2 years later? The system replied, the host changed the fate of the original body. Naturally, the plot of the world also changed. But now, I advise the host not to think too much. Quickly deal with the situation in front of you. Gu Xingyin came back to her senses. There was no road in front of her. Instead, it was a smooth stone wall. The horse under her did not show any signs of stopping. Chapter 15. Gu Xingyin closed her eyes, steeled her heart, and prepared to jump off the horse. She had no choice. If she let it crash into the stone wall, she would be crippled even if she didn't die. Just as Gu Xingyin was about to jump off, she suddenly heard the system's puzzled eh. At the same time, a strong and powerful arm was placed around her waist, and with a slight force, Gu Xingyin was lifted into the air and fell into a broad embrace. Her breath was suddenly filled with a light lotus fragrance, and Gu Xingyin immediately knew who the person behind her was. She heard a scream, and subconsciously wanted to look at the horse she was sitting on, but Ji Yu raised his hand to cover her eyes. Don't look. A clear voice sounded in her ears. She silently thought for a moment, and the scene was probably a little bloody, so she obediently nodded and didn't look over there. Ji Yu looked coldly at the horse that was bleeding and lying in a pool of blood, and it was unknown whether it was dead or alive. He hugged Gu Xingyin and turned to walk back. Gu Xingyin put down the hand that was covering her eyes, and then she remembered, shouldn't this person be in the hidden dragon temple? Why did he come out? Ji Yu considerately carried Gu Xingyin down the horse. Thank you. Gu Xingyin sincerely thanked Ji Yu. If it wasn't for him, even with the system, she would have suffered. You're welcome, I just happened to pass by. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but Gu Xingyin felt that when Jiyu spoke, his eyes were looking at the system in front of her. The system retorted, impossible. Other than the host, no one can see me. Then her eyes must be playing tricks on her, and Gu Xingyin didn't care about this. By the way, why are you here? Gu Xingyin asked. Jiyu smiled, I have nothing to do, so I came out for a walk. Gu Xingyin thought to herself, a person who is grounded can still walk around so calmly. It seems that this eldest prince is being looked down upon by everyone. She was a little excited. The more powerful Jiyu was, the higher her chances of completing the mission, right? Gu Xingyin suddenly felt a trace of warmth on her cheek. She looked up and saw Jiyu's focused gaze. There's a dead leaf here. Looking at the focused face of the man in front of him, Gu Xingyin suddenly felt his heart skip a beat. System, he's really handsome. For some reason, the system didn't answer her. Jiyu smiled as she looked at Jiang Lingzhen's slightly flushed face. Then, she evaded his gaze and looked elsewhere. Ah, this place is so beautiful. Gu Xingyin did not notice that behind her was a vast sea of flowers. What flower is this? Gu Xingyin was a little curious. She gently leaned over and sniffed it. She had never seen this kind of blue flower before. Jiyu followed her and squatted down. This kind of flower comes from a tribe in the south. It's called evoking emotion. It is said that if a young man in that tribe is interested in a girl, he will bring the girl to the evoking emotion flower. The girl will know that the person in front of her likes her and prays for her response. His voice was gentle and pleasant to listen to. The beautiful story that came out of his mouth added a touch of affection. Gu Xingyin felt the heat coming from beside her. She only felt her heart beat faster. What did he mean by bringing her here? And telling such a story? While she was in a daze, a delicate and beautiful evoking emotion flower suddenly appeared in front of her. Behind the flower was Ji Yu's gentle smile. I think this flower suits you very well. Chapter 16. At this moment, the wind was still. Gu Xingyin was at a loss. She called the system in her heart, System, what should I do now? However, the system seemed to have crashed and did not respond to her. Ji Yu looked at Gu Xingyin's flustered face and his expression darkened. He knew that Jiang Lingzhen was not enlightened at this time, but he did not want to wait any longer. When he was about to get closer, his face suddenly changed. Someone was coming. Ji Yu knew that it was not suitable to expose his identity in front of everyone at this time, so he had to whisper to Gu Xingyin, I suddenly have something to do and have to leave immediately. The matter of me coming here today is a little secret between the two of us, okay? He deliberately lowered his voice when he said the last sentence. Gu Xingyin's face flushed red again when he heard the last syllable. Seeing that she nodded obediently, Ji Yu smiled in satisfaction. He thought for a moment, then pinned the love-summoning flower in his hand on Gu Xingyin's hair bun and left in a flash. After Ji Yu left, Gu Xingyin heaved a sigh of relief. Congratulations, host, you have been confessed. The system's voice sounded again. Gu Xingyin felt wronged, I called you so many times just now, but you didn't respond to me. The system was silent for a moment, then said, there was a loophole in the program just now and it is repairing itself. Then what should I do? Gu Xingyin asked. The system thought for a moment. The host's original plan was to support Ji Yu to become the emperor and you to become the empress. In this case, he likes you, so shouldn't it be the most suitable? Gu Xingyin thought for a moment and it seemed to make sense. However, she felt that something was wrong. Ah Zhen. Before Gu Xingyin could figure it out, the call of the county magistrate of Danyang County interrupted her thoughts. Gu Xingyin stood up. The county magistrate of Danyang County got down from the horse and hugged Gu Xingyin immediately. I was scared to death when I saw your horse become like that. Fortunately, you're fine. County Princess Danyang was so scared that she cried. Gu Xingyin comforted her best friend in her arms. Okay, I'm fine now, aren't I? Behind Danyang was a group of armored soldiers. It seemed that Danyang did not see him and went back to get reinforcements in a hurry. He didn't dare to let Gu Xingyin ride a horse anymore. On the way back, Gu Xingyin was forced to sit in a carriage by the county magistrate of Danyang County. I'm just a temporary bodyguard from nearby. By now, Aunt Wencheng and the general must have received the news. County Princess Danyang said to Gu Xingyin. Her father, Commandery Princely, was the son of the former emperor's concubine, so it was normal for her to call Princess Royal of one city her aunt. Just as they were talking, there was a commotion outside the carriage. What's going on? The county lord of Danyang County lifted the curtain. County Princess, it's the general. The guard outside the carriage replied. Hearing that it was her father, Gu Xingyin hurriedly lifted the curtain and went out. Ah Zhen. Seeing that his daughter was fine, the general quickly got down from the horse and hugged her. When he received the news that his daughter's horse went crazy and went missing, he was stunned. After comforting his wife, he immediately brought the soldiers here. Let's go home first. The general sent someone to inform the county magistrate of Danyang County and personally escorted his daughter back to the residence. My Zhen. Princess Royal of one city, who received the news, was waiting outside the door. Seeing that Gu Xingyin was unharmed, her tears fell down. Gu Xingyin was at a loss for a moment. She had never felt such kinship before. She could only clumsily hug Princess Royal of one city and slowly coax her. After coaxing her mother with great difficulty, Gu Xingyin was pulled in front of Princess Royal and her husband and asked about the whole story. Chapter 17. Your horse suddenly went berserk without any warning. One city's Grand Princess and the Grand General's faces were frosty. Hearing this, if they still couldn't see that someone was targeting Zhen, then they would have lived in vain. Investigate. I want to see which black-hearted person wants to harm my Zhen. The eldest princess clenched her teeth and said in a voice filled with hate. Zhen, how did you escape? The general asked. When they found their daughter, she was clearly unharmed. Gu Xingyin thought of Ji Yu's face and her face turned red. Someone suddenly appeared to save me. But he left after saving me. I don't know who it is. The general and eldest princess saw their daughter's red face and didn't think much of it, thinking that she was still in shock. Seeing Gu Xingyin's tired face, they didn't ask anything else and let her go back to her room to rest. Although Jiang Yinshan's matter was done secretly, it wasn't without traces. The eldest princess quickly locked onto her as a suspect, but she couldn't find any evidence. Mother, are you suspecting your daughter? Although your daughter isn't Mother's biological daughter, I have always been respectful to Mother and have never dared to disobey my elder sister. Mother actually suspects your daughter of having bad intentions. Like this, your daughter might as well die here to prove my innocence. Jiang Yinshan said this and was about to slam her head into a pillar. Of course it wouldn't succeed. Jiang Yinshan gave a cold laugh in her heart. She was already the crown prince's concubine and without any evidence, the eldest princess couldn't do anything to her. As expected, the eldest princess waved her hand to send her away. Jiang Yinshan, who had returned to her room, looked at the girl in the mirror. Her originally delicate figure, under the contrast of her luxurious clothes, now had too more dignified elegance. Was this the taste of power? If she was still a lowly concubine's daughter, even if there was no evidence, the eldest princess could kill her with a single sentence. Not enough, not enough. Just being the crown prince's concubine was not enough to shake a giant like the Jiang family. After Jiang Yunshan left, the eldest princess angrily threw the teacup in her hand to the ground. Your Highness, be careful of your body. The mama that had served the eldest princess since she was young comforted her. Look at her. Does she really think that just because she became the crown prince's concubine, she can look down on me? The more Wen City's eldest princess thought about it, the angrier she got. So what if the sun and the moon reflect each other? This consort wants to see just how big of a storm a secondary consort of the crown prince who can't give birth to a child can cause. The eldest princess's expression was cold. Compared to her, Jiang Yunshan was still too inexperienced. At the same time, a document appeared on Ji Yu's desk. This woman again. Ji Yu looked at the name Jiang Yunshan as if she was looking at a dead object. Aunt Wenqing made a move. However, I think it's still too light to end her bloodline. Why is she jealous of Ah Zhen? Honorable status? Stunning looks? Since that's the case, let's destroy them all. With just a few words, Jiang Yunshan's fate was decided. Gu Xingyin was talking to the system. Do you think I should take revenge on Jiang Yunshan? The system said, Host, someone has already fought back for you. Jiang Yunshan won't be able to jump around for much longer. For the rest of your life, all you need to do is to be a quiet and pampered beauty for the rest of your life. Gu Xingyin. What's the point of me coming here? The system said, maybe it's to encourage Ji Yu, the original background, to work hard and reach the peak of life. Chapter 18. Jiang Yunshan sat in the middle of the crowd, listening to the young ladies who used to be of noble status flattering her in a veiled manner. Given her previous status, she naturally wasn't qualified to attend the 70th birthday of the Dukejian Estate's Dowager Duchess. But now, Jiang Yunshan looked around with satisfaction. Who would dare to look down on her now? Little did she know that the noble young ladies in the distance were whispering, is this the concubine-born young lady of the general's estate? She's just a so-so. I don't know what kind of luck she had to be chosen by the imperial family. That's right. She's really become a phoenix now. Her Royal Highness Princess Royal is here with Princess Qingyang. When the voice sounded, the noisy reception hall suddenly quieted down. The Dowager Duchess, who was over 70 years old, personally stood up to welcome the Princess Royal. Jiang Yunshan clenched the handkerchief in her hand. When she came, the Dowager Duchess didn't even look at her and only sent her daughter-in-law to welcome her. As for Jiang Lingzhen, the moment she came in, the people who were originally around her all gathered around her. Jiang Yunshan could even see that many people were looking at her and Jiang Lingzhen, obviously comparing the two of them. She lowered her head and looked at her clothes. They were newly made and were made of fabric bestowed by the palace. Among the guests, they were considered to be of high quality, but they still couldn't be compared to the tribute on Jiang Lingzhen. Now that she only had one sister left, she would send one of the rare things she obtained to the Princess Royal's estate. The Princess Royal loved her daughter like a treasure, so these rare things were almost all used on Princess Qingyang, Jiang Lingzhen. Jiang Yunshan heard the women around her talking about the pigeon egg-sized eastern pearls on the tip of Princess Qingyang's shoes. They were the treasures presented by the northeastern king. The Empress received a pair, the Empress Dowager, who had been worshipping Buddha for a long time, received a pair, and the last pair was given to the Princess Royal. Who knew that Jiang Lingzhen would decorate it on the tip of her shoes? Just this pair of eastern pearls overshadowed the limelight of all the women present. Needless to say, the other things on Princess Qingyang were all rare treasures. Jiang Yunshan only felt that all the gazes were sneering at her. She couldn't stay any longer and told the people around her that she wanted to go out for a walk. She didn't know that when she saw her mother come over, she didn't get up to greet her. Instead, she avoided her. Many people saw this and secretly sneered at her for being a concubine's daughter who didn't know etiquette. When the crown prince came over, he immediately saw Gu Xingyin among the women. He had always thought that Jiang Lingzhen would be his future wife. Although he felt that she was too old-fashioned and polite in front of him, overall, he was quite satisfied with this fiancée. Who would have thought that her father, the emperor, would send out a decree and betroth Jiang Yunshan to her as her concubine? The moment he heard the decree, he thought in his heart, if cousin Ah Zhen did not marry him, who would she marry? Who would be his crown princess in the future? He could have as many women like Jiang Yunshan as he wanted. However, there were only a few women as beautiful as Jiang Lingzhen in the entire Tianqi dynasty. Moreover, Jiang Lingzhen was the only woman who had such a noble status and inviolable temperament. Ji Yi looked at Gu Xingyin, who was like the moon surrounded by stars in the crowd, and his eyes burned with passion. Who else was qualified to have such a beauty other than him, the future emperor? His state of mind was also quietly observed by others. Chapter 19. Gu Xingyin also noticed the possessive gaze of the crown prince. She only felt disgusted. Why was he pretending to be affectionate now? If he really had feelings for Jiang Lingzhen, he wouldn't have done that with Jiang Yunshan. She felt disgusted, but she still had to pretend that she didn't know and joke with the people around her. Fortunately, the crown prince couldn't stay in the flower hall where the women were and quickly left. When they were about to leave the house of Duke, Gu Xingyin suddenly received a message from the system. You mean? Gu Xingyin widened her eyes in disbelief. These two people were too bold, right? The system just told her that the crown prince Ji Yi was in the rockery at the back of the house of Duke, with a servant girl. He really was a pervert. Gu Xingyin thought of the evaluation of the crown prince in the plot. She wondered what Jiang Yunshan would do if she saw the man she was about to marry like this. Gu Xingyin stood up and said to the ladies beside her, I heard that there are a few rare peonies in the back garden of the house of Duke. Why don't we go and see? Of course, no one would refuse. The eldest daughter of the house of Duke, Li Ruoxuan, even smiled and led everyone to the back garden. The peonies were indeed worthy of their reputation. Everyone was amazed. When they were about to leave, one of the ladies suddenly stopped and said, I think I heard something. Everyone heard and stopped in their tracks. Sure enough, they heard a woman sobbing in the distance. Li Ruoxuan, as the head of the house, saw that there were so many people on her side and dozens of servants following behind her. She was very brave and decided to go and see what was going on. It was rare for these young ladies to have this kind of exploration experience, so all of them were in high spirits. But the closer they got, the more they felt that something was wrong. Although her voice sounded like she was sobbing, it was mixed with an indescribable charm. Her voice was so sweet that it could make one's face and ears turn red. A few of the older ladies had already secretly blushed, while the younger ones who didn't know anything still had a confused look on their faces. The experienced maids' faces changed. Ladies, the things in front are not suitable for you to see. Let us go and see what is going on. A few of the older maids looked at each other and looked in the direction of the voice. Ah! An ear-piercing scream was heard, followed by a man's cursing voice, You blind old thing, come and spoil my good fortune. Everyone saw an old granny being kicked to the ground. Hearing the man's voice, it was actually Crown Prince Ji Yi. What happened? There were special patrolling guards in the backyard of Duke Xingguo's mansion. When they heard the scream, they rushed over and saw an old nanny lying on the ground. They didn't understand what had happened and all rushed over. By the time the womenfolk reacted, it was already too late to stop it. His Highness the Crown Prince's clothes were disheveled, and his maidservant, whose face was full of lust, was exposed to everyone. In less than a quarter of an hour, the news of the Crown Prince's love affair had spread throughout the entire Duke Manor. Gu Xingyin watched with interest as Jiang Yunshan's face turned ashen. She wondered if Jiang Yunshan had ever thought that she would have such a day when she seduced the Crown Prince. The order from the palace came very quickly. It meant that no one was allowed to spread the news. But there were so many guests at Duke Xingguo's mansion that day. Who could stop the gossip? Everyone was interested in the secret of the imperial family. In less than 2 days, the entire Shangjing city was talking about the unspeakable things between the crown prince and the maidservant of Duke Xingguo's mansion. Chapter 20. Pa. Another white and blue teacup fell to the ground. Jiang Yunshan was still angry as she swept the other teacup on the table to the ground. Whenever she thought of the Guo-Duke Manor's people looking at her with eyes filled with schadenfreude or pity, she could not suppress the anger in her heart. Reporting to the second miss, the princess is here to visit. The maid outside the door carefully replied. I won't see her. Jiang Yunshan was in a fit of anger, so how could she be in the mood to see anyone, especially Jiang Lingzhen, who she always wanted to surpass. Aya, let me see. What happened to the crown prince's concubine? Gu Xingyin came in and saw the mess in the room. That's right, she was here to deliberately provoke Jiang Yunshan. Jiang Yunshan saw Gu Xingyin come in and her expression changed. How did you come in? Lu Yi. Didn't I say no one is allowed to come in? She said to her maid behind Jiang Lingzhen. Gu Xingyin waved her hand to have Lu Yi leave. Lu Yi was a little hesitant. Gu Xingyin's face turned cold. What? Do my words not carry any weight in the great general's residence? Lu Yi hesitated for a moment. If she went out now, she would at most be reprimanded by the second miss. If she disobeyed the orders of the princess. Lu Yi shuddered. The eldest princess would definitely not let her go. Lu Yi humbly left and even considerately closed the door. Jiang Yunshan angrily glared at her maid. She turned around to see Gu Xingyin looking at her with a smile. What did elder sister come here for? She revealed a smile. Now was not the time to fall out with Jiang Lingzhen. Gu Xingyin suddenly walked in front of Jiang Yunshan and said in a malicious voice, I just came to see. When you found out that your future husband was cheating with a maid, how did you feel? Oh, that's right. Gu Xingyin looked at Jiang Yunshan and added, no matter what you think, you can only keep it in your heart and vent your anger on a few servants. After all, you are only a concubine and have no right to make trouble. Jiang Yunshan was a little dumbfounded. She had never expected to hear such words from Jiang Lingzhen. After a while, she sneered and said, I thought you were really as pure and harmless as you looked on the outside, with no regard for worldly affairs. It turns out that you're just good at pretending. Gu Xingyin didn't take this accusation to heart. She looked around and found a seat that wasn't affected and sat down elegantly. I can't compare to you. You know what? Looking at your face when you heard the news in the Duke Xun manor, how happy was I? When you heard the news, did you feel as disgusted as if you had eaten a fly? When I saw you and the crown prince in the back mountain of the hidden dragon temple, I had the same feeling. This is truly the heavenly Tao's reincarnation cycle. Who will the heavens spare? Gu Xingyin looked with satisfaction at Jiang Yunshan's face turning pale because of her words. You know. Jiang Yunshan never thought that what she thought was a secret was no longer a secret. I know a lot of things. Gu Xingyin suddenly stood up and approached Jiang Yunshan. Looking at her panicked face, she smiled and said in her ear, Who pushed me down at the temple fair? A few days ago, my horse was drugged by someone with hallucinogenic drugs. I'm very clear about all these things. Jiang Yunshan, don't you want to play? I, Jiang Lingzhen, will play with you. After saying this, Gu Xingyin didn't care about Jiang Yunshan's expression and walked out. Chapter 21. Host, why did you purposely scare her? The system was puzzled. Gu Xingyin's face was bright. Did I scare her? What I said was the truth. Whether she thinks too much or not, it's up to her. System, I feel that the host is developing in an incredible direction. Jiyu received the news from his subordinates and read it carefully twice. He covered his mouth and chuckled. I thought it was a lazy and noble Persian cat, but it turned out to be a little wild cat baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. He only felt that Jiang Lingzhen was more adorable like this. He couldn't wait to go to her side and see her. Gu Xingyin sat on a chair and listened to Hu Zhu's report. She said that during this period of time, second young mistress had been very suspicious. The food in the manor was tested for poison in advance before she was allowed to eat it. The courtyard was tightly guarded. She smiled. Jiang Yunshan really was scaring herself. Even if she really wanted to make a move, she wouldn't choose to do it in the general's fu. After all, she was the crown prince's future Tsefei. If something happened, although it wouldn't be serious, the general's fu would still be in some trouble. Soon, it was the day of Jiang Yunshan's marriage. A Tsefei couldn't be married, couldn't be carried in a sedan chair, and didn't have the right to walk through the front door. In addition, the Princess Royal of Wen City really hated Jiang Yunshan, so she hastily prepared some dowry for her. It was just to give her face, so the general's food didn't even have red lanterns. Fortunately, there was the imperial family's reward. Outsiders saw that Jiang Yunshan was very beautiful, but people with discerning eyes could see that this new crown prince Tsefei was not loved by her family. The crown prince didn't care much about her. If he really cared, he wouldn't have fooled around with a servant girl a few days before the wedding. Jiang Yunshan would quickly find that marrying the crown prince wasn't as good as she imagined. Returning home after 3 days, Jiang Yunshan returned to the general's fu alone. It was very ostentatious. After all, she was the only mistress of the crown prince's harem. Gu Xingyin looked at her well-dressed face and chuckled in his heart. He wondered what was left behind after the layers of makeup were removed from her smile. She had the system in her hands and naturally knew that the crown prince had taken a fancy to Jiang Yunshan's servant girl, Lu Xiu, the day after the wedding night. Princess Royal of Wen City didn't attend because she was sick. Only the general received Jiang Yunshan hastily. Jiang Yunshan didn't seem to be willing to stay in the great general's residence. After lunch, she hurried back to the crown prince's residence. In the following days, Gu Xingyin had a very leisurely and comfortable life. Every day, he would listen to the messages sent by the system, admire the flowers and birds, and wait for the right time. This opportunity came very quickly. The empress punished a newly favored low-rank concubine in the palace. Unexpectedly, that concubine was pregnant and caused her to lose her child. That woman was also smart. Taking advantage of the emperor's pity for her, she didn't say anything bad about the empress. She only lamented that she didn't have the fortune to be able to give birth to the imperial family and so on. The imperial family had few people to begin with, so the emperor was displeased with the empress. At this moment it was as if a gust of wind had suddenly blown through the entire imperial city. Rumors of the crown prince harming commoners had spread throughout the city overnight. There were all kinds of versions, and the detailed addresses and names all matched up. Originally, the emperor thought that someone was maliciously slandering the crown prince and only ordered the commoners not to spread it. Who knew that all kinds of rumors would spread, and there were even people who claimed to be the victim's family members. Only then did he take it seriously and order the secret guards to investigate. This investigation made the emperor's heart slightly cold. Chapter 22. Bang! Crown Prince knelt on the ground, and a memorial was thrown to him. Look at it yourself. How did the people in the imperial court impeach you? You are unethical, cruel and heartless. You can't bear the burden of the country. The emperor was furious. Crown Prince panicked. He had heard a lot of rumors recently. He thought he did those things secretly. How did it spread out? He couldn't admit it. Crown Prince kowtowed to the emperor, "Father, I'm innocent. Someone must have framed me. I hope you can investigate it thoroughly." Innocent? The emperor sneered and threw another document to Crown Prince, "Look at it yourself." Crown Prince picked it up and looked at it. His hands began to tremble. The time and place were clearly recorded on it. It was exactly what he thought he did secretly. It turned out that his father had already investigated it thoroughly. Yenshing, you let me down. The matter ended when the emperor suppressed all the memorials to impeach Crown Prince and grounded him for a month. However, although the storm in the imperial court was suppressed, the rumors among the people couldn't be stopped. For a while, Crown Prince's voice among the people dropped to the lowest point in history. Go and find out who released the news. Ji Yu stood there. Her whole person was like a bamboo, beautiful and tall. Master, I can't find out. The person kneeling in front of Ji Yu lowered his head. Ji Yu pondered. This secret guard was left to her by the late empress. Over the years, their strength had improved under her management. They were not worse than the emperor's personal secret guard. How could there be something they couldn't find out? The news seemed to appear out of thin air. I can't find any clues. Okay, I know. Ji Yu waved her hand to let the person leave. What a coincidence. Gu Xingyin opened her eyes wide. Ji Yu looked at Gu Xingyin's surprised face and thought it was not a coincidence. I came for you. He was wearing a brocade robe and a jade belt today. He looked like a young master from an aristocratic family. He looked more human than before. It was the Qixi festival. Everywhere was brightly lit, reflecting the shadows of the pedestrians on the street. Where are Hu Zhu and Lin Lang? Gu Xingyin belatedly realized that the maidservants and guards who had been following her had disappeared. I asked someone to send them away. Let's have some fun tonight. Ji Yu leaned close to Gu Xingyin's ear and whispered. Her hot breath dyed the skin around her ear with a layer of gorgeous color. Seeing this, Ji Yu's eyes darkened. She reached out and held Gu Xingyin's hand. Follow me closely. Don't get separated. The streets were filled with well-dressed women. Gu Xingyin followed Ji Yu all the way and finally stopped at a deserted lakeside. Not far ahead, there were two bright lanterns hanging. When the light shone on the place where the two of them were standing, it was already somewhat weak. In the distance, there was a clamor of people, but this place was quiet and peaceful. Ji Yu did not let go of Gu Xingyin's hand. He tilted his head to look at Gu Xingyin's lowered profile. Looking at the first snow from the city wall, looking at the beauty under the lamp. Gu Xingyin's face, under the hazy and amorous light, showed a kind of amazing beauty. Ah Zhen. Ji Yu felt that his throat was a little dry. I gave you the passion-summoning flower. Do you like it? Gu Xingyin was a little nervous. It was not that she did not have feelings for Ji Yu, but it was destined to be a relationship without a future. Ji Yu would die and pass away, but she was equivalent to having eternal life. What was more desperate than not having it, was losing it after having it. In a hurry, Gu Xingyin suddenly said a sentence. Ha! How do you know my name? Chapter 23. Ji Yu secretly sighed, knowing that Gu Xingyin was avoiding his question. He looked at the girl in front of him who was obviously a little flustered but tried to pretend to be calm, like a little beast with its fur standing on end. His heart softened, and he could not harden his heart to force her. He reached out his hand and gently rubbed Gu Xingyin's head. Not only do I know that you are called Ah Zhen, I also know that your mother is Princess Royal of one city, and your father is the war god general. Seeing Gu Xingyin's eyes widening, Ji Yu chuckled, speaking of which, I am your real cousin. Gu Xingyin said to the system, why did he reveal his identity? The crown prince is now imprisoned by the emperor. If he is found outside, the consequences should be very serious, right? The system, maybe, he is sure that you will not tell anyone. Ji Yu looked at Gu Xingyin, his expression changed from confusion to shock. You are. He covered Gu Xingyin's mouth. Be good, this is not the time to say this name. Ah Zhen, promise me, even if it is your mother, you will not tell her. Gu Xingyin nodded. Jiyu let go of Gu Xingyin's hand and suddenly asked, "Did the Crown Prince come to see you recently?" Gu Xingyin's face suddenly became very ugly. Yes, the Crown Prince came to see Gu Xingyin twice recently. The meaning behind his words was nothing more than to coax Gu Xingyin, saying that the person in his heart had always been her, asking her to wait for him. When the Crown Prince ascended the throne, Gu Xingyin would be the empress of the world. Of course, the Crown Prince was not satisfied, he had always regarded Gu Xingyin as his own. Suddenly, his fiancée became his real cousin. How could the overbearing Crown Prince accept this? If it was another teenage girl, she might have been moved by the Crown Prince's sweet words, but this Jiang Lingzhen's body was filled with Gu Xingyin. She had thoroughly seen through the Crown Prince's scumbag nature. Ji Yu saw her expression and knew that she was right. His expression darkened. He suddenly grabbed Gu Xingyin's hand and bent down. Gu Xingyin's eyes widened in an instant. The touch on her lips told her clearly what had happened. Ji Yu only felt that this feeling was exceptionally sweet. Looking at Gu Xingyin's dazed expression, he let out a chuckle. That chuckle was deep and seductive, and Gu Xingyin felt that the defensive wall she had built in her heart was on the verge of collapsing. Then, she blacked out as Ji Yu raised her hand to cover her eyes. Gu Xingyin sat in the carriage in a daze, recalling what had just happened. That kiss made her dizzy. After that, Ji Yu seemed to have said a few words, but she did not hear them. She knew that Ji Yu's subordinate had informed him that it was time to go back. Then Ji Yu held her hand and brought her to the market from before. The servants of the eldest princess manor were looking for her. Princess. Hu Zhu immediately saw Gu Xingyin in the crowd. She was filled with joy as she quickly ran over. Gu Xingyin turned around and found that the person holding her hand had already disappeared. There were only the words he had said before he left that rang in her ears, "Azhen, you have to wait for me. I promise that in less than a year, I will personally visit Aunt and ask for your hand in marriage in a grand manner." System, what should I do? I might have really fallen in. Gu Xingyin said in a helpless voice, but there was a trace of a smile on her lips. The system was silent for a bit. Host, the system does not prohibit the host from having any extra feelings with the people of the 3,000 worlds. There was one thing that it did not say. No matter how deep and sweet the feelings were, it could not compare to the endless passage of time. Chapter 24. Jiang Yunshan, who had become the Crown Prince's concubine, had been very active recently. She had already held several banquets. Since they had already shed all pretense of cordiality, Gu Xingyin did not need to wrong herself. She did not attend every time because she was sick. In the circle of aristocratic families, everyone knew that the relationship between the Crown Prince's concubine and his sister Princess Qin Yang was not good. Along with this, the relationship between the Crown Prince's concubine and the great general's palace was also very deep. The Crown Prince had expressed his dissatisfaction more than once. Why did he agree to marry Jiang Yunshan? Other than his royal father's decree, the most important thing was that Jiang Yunshan was born in the great general's palace. Behind her stood the eldest princess and the great general. If Jiang Yunshan was not loved by the two, then this move was completely wrong. Jiang Yunshan's days in the Crown Prince's palace were not as glorious as people thought. The Crown Prince was very troubled. His mother was old and her influence on his royal father was not as good as before. He had heard that his royal father had recently taken in several young and beautiful concubines. It had been a long time since he had gone to his mother's palace. Gu Xingyin did not care about these two people's worries. She ate and played every day. Occasionally she would deal with the young men who admired her and appease a certain jealous lover. Ah Zhen's charm is still the same as before. Surrounded by wolves, I toss and turn, unable to sleep. Gu Xingyin looked at the letter in her hand. She was a bit speechless. That kind of immortal-like man could actually say these kinds of words. On the other hand, she felt a little sweet in her heart. That kind of immortal-like man was saying these kinds of words for her. Until the system reminded her that something had happened to Jiang Yunshan. She was poisoned. The system said. The exact news quickly spread to the palace. When Jiang Yunshan was inviting the ladies and young misses to admire the flowers, she suddenly felt an itch on her face. When she went back, there were countless red bumps on her face. When she saw people again, her head was covered with a thick veil and only her eyes could be seen. It was said that the Crown Prince's palace's doctors came in and out and the concubine's room was changed every 2 or 3 days. Jiang Yunshan's veil had never been taken off. Concubine, it's time to apply medicine. Lu Yi carefully said from outside the door. Come in. After a long time, Jiang Yunshan's voice came from the room. Lu Yi gently pushed the door open and came in. She placed the tray on the table and didn't dare to raise her head to look at the person sitting on the couch. Then, she quietly left. Creak. Jiang Yunshan waited until the door closed for a long time before she reached out to remove the veil on her head. Her hands were trembling, but she still took off the mask. The smooth surface of the mirror showed the face of an evil spirit. Those red lumps had already turned into pus and black blood was oozing out. There was a strange smell in the air, and there was not a single unscathed spot on his face. Even she herself wanted to vomit when she looked at her face. However, those useless people from the Imperial Hospital couldn't even find out the reason. The Crown Prince. Ah, her good husband, ever since he came to see her, he never stepped into this room again. She originally thought that he would be her lover, but it turned out that he was just greedy for her beauty. Looking at the disgusting face in the mirror, Jiang Yunshan quickly applied medicine and put on a new veil, only revealing a pair of venomous eyes. Jiang Lingjun, it must be her. She knew what she had done previously. This time, her face must have been her revenge. Jiang Yunshan fiercely gritted her teeth. Jiang Lingjun, since you're this evil, don't blame me for being ruthless. I'm already close to hell, how can you be alone in this world? Chapter 25. Jiang Yunshan entered the palace. She gritted her teeth and swore that her face had been poisoned by someone. She begged the Empress to find the person with evil intentions behind the scenes. At the time, the Emperor had been present. He placed some importance on Jiang Yunshan, this daughter-in-law who entered his dreams with the sun and moon. Also, the Crown Prince Fu was heavily guarded. Today, someone could silently poison the Ce Fei in the Crown Prince's palace. Maybe in the future, that person could also poison her in the Imperial Palace. Investigate. It had to be investigated. Ji Yu naturally received this news. The smile on his face was very meaningful. Investigate. Perfect, I have prepared some interesting things for you as gifts. The result of the secret guard's investigation in the Crown Prince Fu was that they did not know what caused the poison on Jiang Yunshan's face, but they found some things in other places of the Crown Prince's inner courtyard. For example, a strange flower from the western regions, Mi Xiang Tuo. This kind of thing was very rare in the Tianqi dynasty. After the imperial doctor of the Imperial Hospital analyzed its composition, they came to a conclusion. This thing had the effect of causing hallucinations. If it was added to a person's diet, not only would it cause illusions, it could even affect a person's dreams. The emperor's expression immediately became ugly. Emperors were very suspicious. He immediately thought of the dream he had with the empress. The sun and moon were like a dream. This should have been a great auspicious omen, but in the recent days, not only did he not see where the auspicious omen was, the Crown Prince's Fu kept on having accidents. Jiang Yunshan, the Crown Prince's Nutsafei, was not any different from normal people. He suspected that someone had done something to his palace. The hidden dragon hall where the emperor lived was completely investigated. As expected, in an inconspicuous corner of the hall, the Mi Xiang Tuo was found in an ornamental pouch. The emperor was enraged. How could someone so casually add something to his palace? Today, it was just a Mi Xiang Tuo. What if someone wanted his life in the future? Who had done this? Who would benefit the most from his strange dream? The emperor's expression was dark. He did not summon the crown prince. Instead, he immediately gave the order to investigate the inner palace. The inner palace was the empress' jurisdiction. The emperor gave the order to investigate the inner palace but did not inform the empress. There was naturally something fishy about this. The empress hurriedly dressed and came to Hidden Dragon Hall. "Your Majesty, may I know why you've made such a big fuss?" The empress was over 40 years old, and her complexion was well maintained. Although she couldn't be compared to those teenage girls, she had the charm of a mature woman. Moreover, the years of being in a high position gave her a noble temperament that ordinary people could not compare to. The emperor looked at the woman he had doted on for many years and did not say anything. The so-called dream of the sun and moon this time happened to be a dream that he and the empress had at the same time. It was still unknown how much water there was in it and what role the empress played. "Yesterday, I dreamt that my ancestors warned me that there was an evil spirit in the palace, so I wanted to investigate it thoroughly," the emperor said. He noticed that there was a trace of unnaturalness in the empress' eyes, and his suspicions grew. This thorough investigation in the palace lasted for several days, although the emperor strictly ordered that it be kept secret. Some of the aristocratic families in the imperial city, such as the great general's residence, received the news. No one knew what had happened, but for a moment, the entire imperial city became much quieter. After 10 days, the dust finally settled on the investigation of the palace. However, the results of the investigation made the emperor furious. He directly went to the empress' palace. "My good empress, I didn't know that you had done so many things in 20 years. The emperor gritted his teeth as he looked at the empress. He threw a pile of things at her feet. Chapter 26. The empress' hands were steady. She slowly picked up the documents on the ground. There was a detailed list of things, such as which opponents she had persecuted when she was young, which concubines she had caused to have miscarriages, or who she had framed. The empress was not afraid. Those people had long been a pile of bones buried under the palace. The emperor might not even remember what they looked like, let alone severely punish the empress who had accompanied him for 20 years. It was just that her image in the emperor's mind was shattered. The older she was, the harder it would be for her to be favored. She did not care about what happened to herself. She was only worried that the emperor would hate her crown prince. When she flipped to one of the places, the empress' hands trembled. She saw the name. So that was it. She wondered why the emperor was so emotional. It turned out that he had found this. The former empress, her sister, the current emperor's empress, the woman she could not erase from the heart of the man in front of her. "Your Majesty, what is the meaning of this?" After the extreme panic, the empress slowly calmed down. "What is it?" The emperor used to admire the empress' calm face, but now he felt that this face was so disgusting. "Ali's difficult birth was not an accident. I want you to tell me personally." The emperor looked at the empress with red eyes. "Didn't your Majesty already investigate clearly? Why do you still ask me?" The empress gently tidied up her slightly messy hair. "Yes, it was me. I was jealous of my sister. When she gave birth, I bribed the midwife. I planned to kill both the mother and the child. I didn't expect the little one to be so lucky." Slap. The empress' face was slapped to one side. "Vicious woman." The empress suddenly laughed. "Vicious woman? Yes, I am a vicious woman. Lila Juan was the most perfect and kindest woman. But wasn't she killed by me without a sound? I became the empress, my son became the crown prince, and she. Her son is still a monk in the temple. The emperor trembled with anger. He looked at the woman who had accompanied him for more than 20 years and felt that he had never known her. Come, the empress has a sudden illness. It is inconvenient for her to see guests. The Phoenix Palace is closed. The emperor left the empress palace without looking back. During this period of time, the imperial city always had a feeling that a storm was coming. The empress was seriously ill and refused to see any guests. The crown prince was under house arrest. Many people sensed that the Tianqi dynasty was about to change. Especially at this time, the emperor suddenly issued an edict to welcome back the first prince who had been praying for the royal family in the hidden dragon temple. In all these years, the first prince had been an invisible person in the imperial city. Many people had almost forgotten that he used to be the most revered prince, but he had spent 10-some years in a poor temple. Has His Majesty finally figured it out? The general asked his wife. They all knew that the late empress was a hurdle that the emperor could not get over. The young husband and wife were at the peak of their love. The late empress died at the most beautiful time, and from then on, she became a drop of cinnabar in the emperor's heart that could not be erased. The first prince, Jiyu, was undoubtedly lamentable. The emperor blamed the late empress' death on him and never liked him. He was the son of the first wife of the Empress Yuan. In the palace, he was even worse than a servant. In the end, the emperor did not even want to see him and sent him to the hidden dragon temple when he was young. At that time, the general and a group of important officials had tried to dissuade the emperor, but the emperor was determined and there was no room for negotiation. That child has finally made it. These years, it has been hard on him. Wen City's eldest princess was also quite emotional. Chapter 27. Why are you here? Gu Xingyin widened her eyes at the man who suddenly appeared in front of her. At this time, shouldn't he be in the palace? Jiyu gently smiled, you can go to the palace at any time, but you can't see Zhen at any time. Gu Xingyin felt that this person's ability to speak sweet nothings was getting better and better. As soon as the first prince returned to the palace, the emperor held a grand banquet and invited all the aristocratic families and officials to attend. The grandeur of the banquet made people speechless. Anyone with a discerning eye knew that the emperor was building momentum for the first prince who had just returned to the palace. Gu Xingyin attended with her parents. Jiyu came out with the emperor and everyone's eyes were on him. This was the first prince who had lived in the temple for more than 10 years. Many people were surprised. They thought that they would see a timid first prince who didn't have the slightest demeanor of an imperial family, but they didn't expect Jiyu to be such a person. Could it be that the imperial family's genes were so powerful that the first prince was born with such a dragon and phoenix appearance? Gu Xingyin looked at Jiyu from afar, who was sitting below the emperor. He was wearing a dark purple robe today, which outlined his slender figure at a glance. His ink-black hair was tied up by a jade crown, revealing all of his exquisite facial features. His eyebrows and eyes were so picturesque. As if he sensed her gaze, Jiyu suddenly turned his head and met Gu Xingyin's eyes. He slowly revealed a smile to her. Gu Xingyin blinked at him. Hiss. She heard a gasp. Heavens, His Highness the First Prince is so handsome. A young lady next to Jiyu was obviously fascinated by his smile. She lowered her head and whispered to her female companion. Gu Xingyin was secretly proud. Such a handsome person was reserved by her, Gu Xingyin. At the end of the banquet was the main event. The emperor personally held Jiyu's hand and personally bestowed him the title, Prince Yu. As soon as this was said, the officials were in an uproar. The word imperial had always been exclusive to the emperor. Now that it was given to the first prince by the emperor's meaning was obvious. Moreover, neither the empress nor the crown prince attended the banquet, which indirectly indicated the emperor's attitude. The way many people looked at Ji Yu had changed. Many ministers who had women of the right age in their families had set their sights on Ji Yu. After the palace banquet ended, Gu Xingyin didn't have time to speak with Ji Yu and returned home with her parents. Everyone could see Prince Yu's glory and favor. The emperor had even built a new palace for him. Once a prince reached adulthood and was crowned king, it was customary for him to leave the palace and build his own residence. Only one person could always live in the palace, and that was the crown prince. The emperor even proposed to take a concubine for him, but was stopped by Ji Yu. "Why?" the emperor asked curiously. Ji Yu's face reddened. "This son already has a woman in his heart." The emperor was surprised. "Oh. Which family's young miss was she? If your statuses are suitable, I can grant you a marriage. If your statuses aren't suitable, I'm afraid she will be wronged." Ji Yu hesitated for a moment. "It's the young miss who sat next to my aunt in Wen City that day." The emperor thought for a moment and suddenly smiled. "I know, you're talking about your aunt in Wen City's only daughter, Princess Qin Yang. I watched Ajin grow up from a young age, and he has a good character. If you like, I can grant you a marriage." Ji Yu shook his head. "Father Emperor, she still doesn't know me. This kind of marriage is too sudden. I hope she will also have a good impression of me." The emperor looked at the blush on Ji Yu's face, which resembled his mother's, and suddenly thought of himself and Ah Lu in the past. The emperor laughed. All right, you young people like to be in love with each other. How about this, I will give a decree to let you learn the art of war from the great general and let you see Ajin more often. My son is so outstanding, he will definitely be able to win the heart of a beauty. He was just testing the waters. After all, the great general had a large number of troops. If Ji Yu had already colluded with him, but Ji Yu's words just now dispelled the last trace of hesitation in his heart. Thinking about it, Ji Yu was just a young man who admired Ajin. That day, when he saw Ajin's stunning appearance, he was moved. Ji Yu lowered his head and hid the cold light in his eyes. "Many thanks, Father Emperor." Chapter 28. As a result, the great general's manor had a new visitor, which was the newly promoted His Highness Prince Yu. The great general was a bit vexed recently. This His Highness Prince Yu was truly a genius. Whether it was arranging troops or strange formations, he could understand them all with just a hint. This made the great general, who always cherished talents, very satisfied. However, no matter how satisfied he was with Prince Yu, the great general could not have a good impression of him. Ji Yu, this brat, he did not even try to hide the way he looked at Ajin. No father would have a good impression of a man who tried to steal his precious daughter. What made the great general even more depressed was that his wife, who should have been on the same side as him, actually looked quite satisfied with Prince Yu. Today will end here. Does your highness want to stay in the manor to eat lunch? The great general said stiffly. The great general's hospitality, it would be impolite for me to refuse. Ji Yu accepted with a smile. The great general was choked by Ji Yu's straightforwardness. To be honest, although Ji Yu ran to the great general's manor every day, there was almost no chance for the two of them to be alone. Although the customs of the Tianqi dynasty were more open, unmarried men and women still needed to avoid each other. After Ji Yu left, the eldest princess of Wen City specially pulled Gu Xingyin into a room. What do you think of Prince Yu? Gu Xingyin did not speak, but her face quietly turned red. The eldest princess of Wen City saw her daughter like this and already knew the answer. She secretly sighed, I think His Highness Prince Yu is a good person, much better than the crown prince. But looking at Imperial Brother's current state, I'm afraid there will be a change in the crown prince. Prince Yu's future is limitless. I don't want you to go to that place, you need to think carefully. Gu Xingyin looked at the eldest princess of Wen City's expression and her heart was moved. This woman, towards Jiang Lingjun, she really doted on her like she was the apple of her eye. She could not help but reach out and hug the eldest princess of Wen City. Just like when she was young, she leaned her head on her mother's leg. Ever since Jiang Lingjun grew up, she rarely acted like this. The eldest princess' nose turned sour. How could she still remember the crown prince and Prince Yu? Looking at her daughter, her heart melted into a puddle of water. Another month passed, and tribes came to the northwest border to invade. The emperor appointed the great general as the commander, and Prince Yu as the deputy commander, leading an army of 200,000 to the west. The direction of the court was already clear, the crown prince and the empress were still under house arrest. The emperor sending Prince Yu out this time was clearly to pave the way for him. When he returned to the capital with a great victory, when Prince Yu's reputation reached its peak, that would be the time when the emperor deposed the crown prince. The day before the battle, Gu Xingyin and Ji Yu met. Ah Zhen. Ji Yu looked at Gu Xingyin with shining eyes. Wait for me. When the army returns, I will go to the general's residence to ask for your hand in marriage. Gu Xingyin just looked at him with a smile. Ji Yu suddenly sighed and walked forward to pull Gu Xingyin into her arms. Zhen, I can see that you have feelings for me. I, Ji Yu, like you. One day, I hope to hear the same words from your mouth. He said in a low voice beside Gu Xingyin's ear. Giving Gu Xingyin a final hug, Ji Yu turned and left. He did not turn back, so he did not know that Gu Xingyin behind him was staring at his back until she could not see anything. System, he does not know that I have already said those words countless times in my heart. Gu Xingyin said quietly. I, Gu Xingyin, like Ji Yu. Chapter 29. This battle lasted longer than expected, but the result did not change much. A year later, the 200,000 soldiers returned to the court. In this year, Prince Yu's name, Ji Yu, was widely known, especially when he led a group of soldiers deep into the enemy's camp and took the head of the enemy's leader. This was also spread by the citizens of the Tianqi dynasty. Today was the day that the army returned to the court. Countless people flooded the streets and stopped on both sides of the road, wanting to admire His Highness Prince Yu's style. Gu Xingyin was also part of this group. She and the eldest princess of Wen City were together, protected by a few servants. They stood in the crowd, waiting for the victorious hero. Very quickly, the army appeared at the city gates. The great general was riding a tall horse at the front, followed closely by Ji Yu, who was dressed in silver-white armor. After a year of military service, his elegant and jade-like face had a hint of murderous aura. Just a casual glance could cause people to blush. Gu Xingyin's position was very good. Not only could she see the great general and Ji Yu clearly, but she could also be seen by them at a glance. She also gave Ji Yu a big gift, evidence of the crown prince's collusion over the years. The assassins might have already appeared on the emperor's case. At this time, Ji Yu's reputation was at its peak, and the emperor already had a change of heart. With this strong medicine, there was no room for negotiation. Ji Yu looked up and saw Gu Xingyin. He urged his horse over and was about to say something to Gu Xingyin when his expression suddenly changed. Suddenly, a few silhouettes emerged from the crowd with weapons in their hands and rushed towards Ji Yu. It was clear that their target was Ji Yu. Gu Xingyin was immediately protected by the great general's guards. Seeing this, Ji Yu relaxed slightly and focused on dealing with the assassins in front of him. These people had clearly been carefully trained, and their moves were tricky and ruthless, causing Ji Yu to be at a disadvantage for a while. What was even worse was that the soldiers who were originally following behind Ji Yu were also being held back. When the commoners saw the scene of the assassination, they were all scared silly. They completely ignored the Grand General's orders and began to scatter in all directions. For a moment, the situation was somewhat out of control. With a moment of carelessness, Ji Yu's arm was slashed by an assassin, and the horse under him cried out, falling into a pool of blood. Ji Yu rolled on the ground and landed not far from where Gu Xingyin was. Go and help His Highness Prince Yu. The eldest princess of Wen City made a prompt decision. The assassin's target was clearly Ji Yu, and they were not in danger. The Grand Princess of Wen City regretted her decision countless times. She almost lost the most important person in her life. The great general's guards were all elites. With their help, the pressure of Ji Yu was greatly reduced. Finally, all the assassins were killed. Ji Yu heaved a sigh of relief and prepared to walk over. Gu Xingyin stood there looking at him with a smile, preparing to tell him that she had prepared a big surprise for him. Ji Yu's expression suddenly became frightened, and he rushed towards Gu Xingyin without any regard for anything else. Gu Xingyin was confused, but the system's warning sounded in her mind, "Host, be careful," but it was already too late. A sharp pain came from her chest, and she looked down. It was a small dagger, and the owner of the dagger was a completely unfamiliar face. In a daze, Gu Xingyin felt that she had fallen into a warm embrace. Chapter 30. Ji Yu's hands had never trembled like this before. In that moment, he felt that his world was about to collapse. The woman in his arms was slightly pale from the loss of blood, but she still tried to maintain her smile. Gu Xingyin felt a bit dizzy. She looked at Ji Yu with some effort and suddenly remembered that she still had something to say to him. "Did I tell you that I?" "She knew it." Ji Yu suddenly raised his hand to stop Gu Xingyin from speaking. "Don't say it first." He buried his head in Gu Xingyin's neck, not letting anyone see his face. "When you're better, tell me personally." Gu Xingyin was a bit dizzy at this time. She didn't reply to Ji Yu and her consciousness fell into a deep sleep. Wen City's eldest princess almost fainted when she saw her daughter's state. She called for someone to bring the princess to the imperial physician with a trembling voice. She was surprised to see Ji Yu suddenly stand up and carefully carry Gu Xingyin. "What are you doing?" Wen City's eldest princess asked. "Go directly to the palace, don't waste time." Ji Yu left without another word. When Gu Xingyin was awake, she didn't know what time it was. She didn't know how long she had slept. She only felt that her body was soft and she couldn't use any strength. "System!" Gu Xingyin shouted in her heart, "Where am I now?" She was a bit afraid that she was in the space where she was first born. She admitted that she was a bit reluctant. She was reluctant to leave Wen City's eldest princess, reluctant to leave the general, and reluctant to leave Ji Yu. The host has been unconscious in the mission world for 6 days. It is recommended that the host wake up as soon as possible, otherwise the mission will be hard to complete. The host's voice sounded. The system blamed itself. It didn't warn the host in time, causing the host to be injured. It decided to work hard in the future and be a more responsible system. Gu Xingyin opened her eyes. Everything that entered her eyes was a bit unfamiliar. This wasn't her room, nor was it anywhere in the general's residence. "Princess, you're awake." A surprised voice was heard. Gu Xingyin took a closer look. It was a palace maid wearing a light green palace dress. Looking at her dress, Gu Xingyin knew that she was in the palace at the moment. The palace maid walked over happily and poured a cup of tea for Gu Xingyin. It was still warm, so she must have prepared it all along. Another palace maid hurriedly went out. "Princess, are you feeling unwell? Do you need any food?" The palace maid in green asked. Gu Xingyin shook her head slightly. At this moment, she felt extremely tired. Soon, a figure lifted the curtain and entered. Smelling the familiar lotus fragrance, Gu Xingyin knew that it was Ji Yu. "Ah Zhen." Ji Yu's eyes were very bright. God knew how much he wanted to stay by his beloved's side and watch her wake up, but he couldn't. He couldn't let others, especially his imperial father, know how much he cared about her. That person was a standard emperor. He definitely wouldn't allow a woman to have such a deep influence on his successor. The two of them didn't spend much time talking to each other. When city's eldest princess and the general arrived very quickly. After hearing from the doctor that her daughter was fine and only needed to rest, when city's eldest princess brought Gu Xingyin back to the general's residence without any explanation. Gu Xingyin winked at Ji Yu. After returning to the residence, Gu Xingyin was fed all kinds of supplements every day. She took the time to ask the system about the current situation. The system's answer was very detailed. Gu Xingyin provided the evidence of the crown prince's collusion, causing the emperor to fly into a rage. This was a taboo for those in power. How could they allow others to sleep beside their bed? In the emperor's heart, this matter was much more serious than poisoning the previous empress. The crown prince was now the deposed crown prince. Chapter 31. The two groups of assassins that attacked us that day. It was clear that the group of assassins that attacked Ji Yu that day was not the same as the group that attacked her. The former's target was Ji Yu, and the latter's target was clearly Jiang Lingzhen. Gu Xingyin found it very strange. Jiang Lingzhen was considered a typical young miss of an aristocratic family. She spent most of her life in the manor, only going out occasionally. She had never offended anyone. Who was it that wanted her life? It has already been investigated. The group of assassins that attacked Ji Yu was the work of the crown prince and his henchmen. They were delusional in thinking that if Ji Yu was killed, the crown prince's position would not be shaken. But they did not know that a crown prince that was disliked by the emperor no matter what, he no longer had a chance. Then the person that tried to assassinate me? Gu Xingyin asked. The system replied, it was the outsider Jiang Yunshan. Actually, Gu Xingyin had already guessed that the person that wanted Jiang Lingzhen to die the most was probably Jiang Yunshan. She didn't understand why Jiang Yunshan wanted to kill Jiang Lingzhen when there wasn't any deep hatred between the two of them. The jealousy of humans was indeed terrifying. This outsider, she will not give up until she reaches the Yellow River. A few major events had happened in the imperial city recently. First, His Highness Prince Yu returned to court and encountered an assassination attempt. The emperor was furious. After a thorough investigation, the empress was imprisoned in Fengqi Palace. The crown prince was stripped of his title as a mediocre prince and was ordered by the emperor to guard the imperial mausoleum. The crown prince's side concubine Jiang Yunshan, who had been envied by everyone, silently disappeared from everyone's sight. Of course, these major events were overshadowed by the two events that followed closely behind. First, during the morning court session, the emperor conferred the title of the new crown prince of the Tianqi dynasty. Ji Yu becoming the crown prince from Prince Yu was within everyone's expectations. Second, on the day the emperor conferred the title of crown prince, the general's manor also received a marriage decree from the palace. Princess Qingyang, Jiang Lingzhen, became the crown princess of the new crown prince of the Tianqi dynasty. This brat, he actually directly asked the emperor for a marriage decree. The general was very unhappy. I think His Highness the Crown Prince is sincere to our Azhen. You didn't see His Highness the Crown Prince's expression when Azhen was attacked. Even I, as his mother, felt scared when I saw it. When city's eldest princess still felt a little flustered when she thought about it. Ji Yu's expression at that time was actually a little crazy. If Azhen hadn't woken up at that time, who knew what he would have done? Regardless of what the eldest princess and the great general thought, Gu Xingyin and Ji Yu, who were involved, were undoubtedly happy. The crown prince and crown princess wedding was discussed by the common people in the imperial city for a long time. Even after a long time, whenever a family held a wedding and someone said how grand the occasion was, there would always be others who would refute, grand? What was this? You haven't seen the wedding of His Majesty and Her Majesty back then. That was truly an unparalleled prosperity. Gu Xingyin completed her mission and became the noblest woman in the dynasty. The story of Tian Qi dynasty's Xingde Emperor and Empress Xiao Zhao was still talked about enthusiastically even after 1,000 years. Xingde Emperor was the only emperor who didn't take in any concubines in the harem. He only guarded the empress his entire life. Even when Empress Xiao Zhao passed away for less than a day, he followed her. Born in the same quilt, died in the same cave. These two people truly achieved this point. System, I finally know why humans only need to live a lifetime. Gu Xingyin returned to the pure white space. A tear fell from the corner of her eye. With such a person accompanying her, what was the point of asking for an afterlife? Her right hand seemed to still have the warmth of that person. At the last moment of her life, Ji Yu held Gu Xingyin's hand. Zhen, it is Ji Yu's fortune to be able to accompany you in this life. Chapter 32. Jiang Yunshan was originally not called Jiang Yunshan. When she woke up and found herself lying in an antique room, she was very excited. Transmigration, this was a word that was used too much in her world. She never thought that it would happen to her one day. Looking at the luxurious and elegant decorations in the room, the well-dressed maids respectfully called her Second Miss. Every day, she only needed to admire flowers and listen to music while waiting for people to serve her. She felt that there was nothing better in life than this. However, a person's desire could never be satisfied. After receiving Jiang Yunshan's memories, she found that the original body's noble identity and luxurious life was just a laughable perception. Jiang Yunshan was only a concubine's daughter. Above her, there was an older sister who was better than her in terms of background, appearance, and talent. Jiang Lingjun. Jiang Yunshan began to pay attention to Jiang Lingjun. After seeing Jiang Lingjun's life, she knew that her high-quality life was just a joke in other people's eyes. What Jiang Lingjun was wearing was a tribute from the palace. What Jiang Lingjun ate every day was personally made by the eldest princess who spent a lot of money to invite the best chef from Jiangnan. Jiang Lingjun liked bamboo. The general's mansion's backyard specially opened up a bamboo forest so that she could occasionally sit there when she was free. Jiang Lingjun's childhood sweetheart was the current crown prince. The more information she received, the more unbalanced Jiang Yunshan's heart became. Based on what? She was the one who transmigrated. She should be the true proud daughter of heaven. Jiang Lingjun was just a native. Based on what could she be compared to dust? This unwillingness, after seeing Jiang Lingjun in person, reached its peak. In Jiang Yunshan's memories, Jiang Lingjun's impression was not very deep. After all, the original body was as timid as a mouse. How could she dare to get close to such a dazzling older sister? She only knew that Jiang Lingjun was a very beautiful woman. But no matter how she imagined, she could not imagine that Jiang Lingjun would look like this. A national beauty, nothing more than this. Jiang Yunshan knew that there was a demon living in her heart. Its name was jealousy. The darkness in her heart continued to grow. She wanted to steal everything from Jiang Lingjun and step on this woman under her feet. Therefore, she planned to push Jiang Lingjun down at the temple fair. Unfortunately, Jiang Lingjun only had a scratch on her skin, which was not a big problem. Later on, she began to deliberately seduce the crown prince. When she saw the crown prince, she knew that such a man would not reject beauty that was sent to his doorstep. As expected, the crown prince took the bait without any hesitation after using a few tricks. However, things were completely different from what he had expected. Why did Jiang Lingjun not care at all? She had become the crown prince's concubine, but what about her? She became the only princess in the dynasty with a fief. She was still no match for her. Thus, she became crazier and crazier. But how could that woman, Jiang Lingjun, be so lucky? The horse was killed, but she was not hurt at all. And her face, Jiang Yunshan thought. Jiang Lingjun had come to take revenge on her. Other than her, who else would be so vicious as to poison her? She felt that Jiang Lingjun was vicious, but he never reflected on his mistakes. The crown prince's position was in jeopardy, and she, as the crown prince's concubine, had become a joke. Jiang Yunshan thought, then let's go to hell together. She finally received the news she wanted. Princess Qingyang, Jiang Lingjun, was assassinated and unconscious. It was unknown whether she was dead or alive. Unfortunately, before she received the news of her death, the emperor's white silk was sent to her residence. Jiang Lingjun, I will wait for you in hell. She closed her eyes with a smile. Chapter 33. Hua City International Airport was bustling with people. There were people coming and going here every day. People from different countries and different skin colors hurried by. Many passengers subconsciously looked in one direction when they passed by. It was a man in a suit, a pure black custom-made suit, perfectly outlining his tall and straight figure. On his handsome face, his brows were slightly furrowed, and his eyes had been looking in a certain direction of the airport. Obviously, he was waiting for someone. A few ladies who weren't in a hurry quietly stood nearby. They were curious as to who could make such a charming man wait for. Soon, they knew the answer. The man's eyes suddenly lit up. His expressionless face suddenly softened, and he quickly walked forward. Cc. Gu Xingyin, who was in the crowd, subconsciously raised her head and looked at the man walking towards her. She was looking at the man, and the people around her were looking at her. Because she was traveling, Cheng Shiji was wearing relatively simple clothes. A light green waist-length dress outlined her entire figure. Wide sunglasses covered half of her face, and her light brown wavy hair added a charming feeling to her. Slender waist, long legs, fair skin, and beautiful appearance. These were the most realistic portrayals of Cheng Shiji. Big brother. Cheng Shiji gave the man a big smile, and then handed the suitcase in her hand to the man without hesitation. Cheng Buxuan looked at his sister dotingly and played the role of a porter without complaint. If the employees in the company saw that gentle look, they would definitely exclaim that the general manager was possessed. Big brother, didn't second brother come? Cheng Shiji, now Gu Xingyin, asked. Cheng Buxuan replied, Qishuan has an art exhibition today. He really can't leave. Gu Xingyin pouted. No matter how busy he is, can he be more important than me, his sister? See if I don't exploit him ruthlessly when I go back. This time, Gu Xingyin was playing the role of Cheng Shiji. She had the image of a little princess. She came from a wealthy family and was pampered. Therefore, she could act coquettishly and throw a tantrum. Cheng Shiji was the youngest daughter of Cheng Jinqing and his wife, the head of the Qing group. Cheng Jinqing and his wife liked daughters, but they had 2 sons after their marriage. When their youngest daughter, Cheng Shiji, was born, the couple was overjoyed. Not only did he personally visit a famous physiognomist to name his daughter Shiji, but he was also afraid that his daughter would not have a playmate. He even adopted a girl who was about the same age as Cheng Shiji from a distant relative and raised her together. The status of the adopted daughter of the chairman of the Qing group was something that many people could only dream of. Naturally, the couple was more than willing. The adopted girl's name was Cheng Yiru. In name, she was Cheng Shiji's older sister, which meant that she was the female supporting character in this world. When the original owner, Cheng Shiji, was 18 years old, she was engaged to Yuan Hang, the second young master of the Yuan group, another group in Hua City. It was originally a marriage of equal social status. Unexpectedly, Yuan Hang fell in love with Cheng Shiji's older sister, Cheng Yiru. Cheng Yiru also had feelings for Yuan Hang. The two of them had been secretly pulling each other. Even after Cheng Shiji and Yuan Hang got married, they did not stop contacting each other. Cheng Shiji had been neglected by her husband ever since they got married. One day, when she went out with her friends, she saw Yuan Hang and Cheng Yiru kissing in the parking lot. Only then did she know that her husband had an affair with her older sister. Chapter 34. Qing Shiji had been pampered by the Qing family since she was young and had never suffered such grievances. She made a scene at the Yuan Corporation and returned to the Qing family to tell her family about it. Qing Jinsheng and his wife were furious. Not only did they chase Cheng Yiru out of the Qing family, but they also divorced their daughter from Yuan Hang and stopped all business dealings with the Yuan Corporation. After Cheng Yiru was chased out of the Qing family, she lived a miserable life. She was used to living a luxurious life in the Qing family and it was difficult for her to live frugally. The money she earned could not meet her needs at all. Yuan Hang was also closely watched by the Yuan family and was not allowed to contact Cheng Yiru. In the end, Cheng Yiru had no choice but to sell her body. In the end, she contracted a terrible disease and died miserably. When she opened her eyes again, she returned to the year when she was 18 years old. The reborn Cheng Yiru hated Qing Shiji and the Qing family. Qing Shiji had schemed to seduce Yuan Hang. How could a young man like Yuan Hang resist a woman who had been through so much in her previous life? Soon, Yuan Hang obeyed Cheng Yiru's every word. Cheng Yiru said a lot of bad things about the Qing family to Yuan Hang openly and secretly, causing Yuan Hang to hate the Qing family, especially Qing Shiji. She even played dirty tricks on an important project of the Qing family and caused the Qing family to go bankrupt. When Qing Jinsheng and his wife went abroad for business, their plane crashed. Their eldest brother was accidentally injured by a group of drunk people in a bar and lost his life. The two artists who were devoted to art were also framed and accused of plagiarism. They could not resist the pressure of public opinion and committed suicide. Qing Shiji went from a luxurious life to an employee who had to work to pay off her debts. However, Cheng Yiru refused to let her go and hired a gangster to humiliate her. In the end, Qing Shiji could not bear the humiliation and committed suicide. Cheng Yiru and Yuan Hang held a wedding with everyone's blessings. Gu Xingyin came to Qing Shiji's body to reverse the changes in the world caused by Cheng Yiru's rebirth. Originally, after Qing Shiji divorced Yuan Hang, she was still the eldest daughter of the Qing family and was pampered by her family for a lifetime. After Gu Xingyin received the plot transmitted by the system, she felt disgusted by Cheng Yiru for no reason. It could be said that the Qing family had never mistreated Cheng Yiru. Everything was the same as Qing Shiji's. What about Cheng Yiru? Not only did she shamelessly seduce her younger sister's husband, everything that happened after that was her own fault. After her rebirth, she actually treated the Qing family as her lifelong enemy and caused their family to be destroyed. Gu Xingyin's mission was to protect the Qing family, expose Cheng Yiru's disguise, and kick away Yuan Hang, the scumbag who had let Qing Shiji down. Cheng Bushuan drove his sister back to the Qing family's main residence. Miss is back. The butler, who had been guarding the door, saw Cheng Bushuan's car at a glance. As soon as Gu Xingyin got off the car, she was embraced by a noble lady. My precious Cece, I haven't seen you for a year and you've become even more beautiful. The lady looked at Gu Xingyin carefully and added, you seem to have lost some weight. You won't be leaving this time, right? Mom will make soup for you every day. I must take good care of you until you're white and plump. Gu Xingyin didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she looked at the lady, who was Qing Shiji's mother, Bai Fia. Qing Shiji's mother, Bai Fia, was almost 50 years old, but she had taken good care of herself. She was graceful and beautiful. Mom, are you going to raise me like a little pig? Gu Xingyin's face was bitter, which made everyone tease her. Dad. Gu Xingyin looked at the man standing beside Qing Shiji's mother. It was her father, Qing Jinsheng. Gu Xingyin, who knew the plot, knew that Qing Jinsheng loved his daughter as much as his wife. It was just that men were more introverted and not good at expressing their feelings. She walked forward and gave her father a gentle hug. Dad, I missed you so much. Chapter 35. The original Qing Shiji had been studying abroad. At the age of 17, she had already obtained a double bachelor's degree. Second brother went to an art exhibition. What about sister? Gu Xingyin asked. Hearing Qing Yiru's name, Qing Shiji's mother frowned. I don't know what's wrong with Yiru recently. She's so mysterious every day. Sometimes, she doesn't even go home at night. After all, Qing Shiji's mother had raised her for more than 10 years. Qing Shiji's mother also had true feelings for Qing Yiru. Gu Xingyin thought to herself, Qing Yiru is busy, exchanging feelings, with Yuan Heng. Of course, she doesn't have time to go home. That's right, Qing Yiru had already been reborn. She was 1 year older than Qing Shiji. She was just 18 years old. She had just been reborn last month. Cece. At this time, a voice came from behind. Before Gu Xingyin could turn around, a big hug surrounded her. It was second brother Qing Qishuan. Unlike the introverted and calm eldest brother Qing Bushuan, second brother Qing Qishuan's personality was worthy of the words, passionate like fire. Perhaps artists like them could only have a steady flow of inspiration if they always maintained such a passionate state of mind. Gu Xingyin looked at the family with a smile and secretly swore in her heart. In this life, she would never let that woman, Qing Yiru, destroy such a perfect family. Dad, Mom, I'm back. Qing Yiru walked in and saw other people in the living room. Big brother, second brother. Qing Yiru's eyes swept across and saw another person sitting on the sofa. Little sister, you're back. Qing Yiru tried to control the hatred in her heart and shouted with a smile. Gu Xingyin slowly turned around, and their eyes met. Qing Shiji looked at Qing Yiru. She was wearing a tight shirt. She was only 18 years old, but she already had the capital to be proud of. The shirt was a little tight, and she wore a pair of denim shorts that perfectly showed off her long legs. Although her appearance was not as perfect as Qing Shiji's, it was enough to attract men. Qing Yiru was also looking at Qing Shiji. Her impression of Qing Shiji was still stuck in the memories of her previous life. At that time, Qing Shiji was already a married woman. She was mature and beautiful, like a full and seductive peach that could easily make people go crazy. The 17-year-old her was a little different from what he remembered. Her skin was sparkling and translucent like snow. It was obvious that she had been pampered since she was young and had not been able to give birth. Qing Yiru herself had also grown up in luxury, but she had never been able to maintain Qing Shiji's delicate skin. Come to think of it, some things were really innate. The current Qing Shiji still had a hint of immaturity in her eyes, but her exquisite facial features were already fully displayed. Especially the arrogance in her eyes, one could tell at a glance that this was a little princess who had been doted on by thousands of people. Qing Yiru hated Qing Shiji's arrogance the most. She was always like this and never needed to consider anything. The Qing family protected her too well and considered everything for her. She just needed to be a little princess in the lighthouse forever. I told the family about my return a month ago. Sister, you didn't even know. Gu Xingyin pouted unhappily and complained half-truthfully. Qing Yiru sneered in her heart. She had been back for a month and didn't even have time to sort out her memories from her previous life. How could she remember when she, Qing Shiji, would come back? Qing Shiji was like this. It was just a small matter of returning to the country, but she couldn't wait for the whole family to pick her up. Chapter 36. Brother, I don't want to see it. Gu Xingyin hugged Qing Bushuan's hand and acted coquettishly. You're a major shareholder of the Qing group. Of course, the people under you have to get to know you. Qing Bushuan was not ambiguous at all. Qing Jinqing and his wife loved their daughter as much as their life. They left Qing Shiji 20% of the shares of the huge Qing group. Qing Shiji was not interested in business, and Qing Zhensheng and his wife did not intend to let their daughter be a strong woman. These shares and dividends alone were enough for Qing Shiji to live like a princess for the rest of her life. The headquarters of the Qing group was located in a commercial office building in the center of Hua City. The new receptionist watched the general manager walk into the elevator with a perfect smile on her face. After that, she said to her companion excitedly, "Oh my God, the general manager is really handsome. But who is the girl beside him? She looks so young, but she's so beautiful. She can make the usually serious general manager smile so gently. Could she be his fiancée?" Another girl took out a mirror to see if her makeup was smudged. After hearing her companion's words, she sneered and said, "What fiancée? Haven't you heard that our general manager has a sister?" The new receptionist was puzzled. Didn't the general manager's sister come to the company a few days ago? A few days ago, Cheng Yiru came to the company. The old employee smiled. One is his biological daughter, and the other is his adopted daughter. Tell me, which one is the general manager's sister? Cheng Zhensheng and his wife never hid the fact that Cheng Yiru was their adopted daughter. Therefore, when the Yuan group chose the marriage partner, they did not consider Cheng Yiru at all. Who is the girl beside your general manager? A man in a suit with a piercingly cold aura looked calmly at Gu Xingyin, who had one hand on Qing Bushuan's body. The casual public relations manager breathed a sigh of relief. He was arranged by the company to receive the young master of the Yuan group. The other party's aura was so terrifying that even he, who was used to seeing storms, felt a little breathless. Seeing that the young master of the Yuan group was attracted by other things, he breathed a sigh of relief and quickly replied, "That's our chairman's youngest daughter, the general manager's sister, Miss Qing Shiji." Qing Shiji. Yuan Su repeated this name a few times in his heart. He felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity when he looked at Qing Shiji. After thinking about it carefully, Yuan Su was sure that he had never seen her before. Thinking about it again, wasn't Qing Shiji from the Qing group the girl that his family wanted to marry? Was she Yuan Hang's future wife? For some reason, when Yuan Su thought of this possibility, he actually felt slightly irritated. It seemed that he needed to take a good rest after finishing all the work at hand. Yuan Su attributed this irritation to work being too busy. As if sensing something, Gu Xingyin turned around in confusion, but all she saw was a back view. Shaking her head, Gu Xingyin laughed at herself. She actually felt that Ji Yu was looking at her. But how was that possible? That person was different from him. He was no longer around. Thinking of Ji Yu, Gu Xingyin's mood instantly fell. What's wrong, Cece? Cheng Bushuan noticed that something was wrong with his sister. Gu Xingyin shook her head, I'm just a little tired. Cheng Bushuan saw that his sister looked tired, so he did not suspect anything, then go to my lounge and sit for a while. I'll ask someone to send you home later. Gu Xingyin nodded. Chapter 37. Miss Cheng, I've heard a lot about you. A young man walked toward Gu Xingyin with a glass of red wine. Gu Xingyin smiled at him, picked up the cup in his hand, and took a sip. After sending the man away, Qing Shiji looked around and found an inconspicuous corner to sit down. This banquet was to celebrate the collaboration between the Qing group and the Yuan group on a big project. The Yuan group and the Qing group were giants in Hua City's business world. Almost all the famous people in Hua City's business world came to this banquet. As the only daughter of the Qing family, Qing Shiji was naturally favored by countless people. Moreover, Qing Zhensheng was famous for loving his daughter as much as his life. For many young men with average social status, if they could marry Qing Shiji, it was equivalent to climbing up the Qing Corporation's big tree. Gu Xingyin was very annoyed by this kind of flattery. In the previous world, she gave her heart to Ji Yu. As a person who was created, Gu Xingyin's view of relationships was quite simple. Her heart was very small and could only accommodate one person. At this moment, she was sitting in a hidden corner and coldly watching Cheng Yiru socialize with the guests like a fish in water. As the adopted daughter of the Cheng Corporation, although Cheng Yiru's popularity was not as good as Cheng Shiji's, she was still the existence that most people flattered. Cheng Yiru enjoyed this feeling very much. She remembered the last days of her previous life. Because she had contracted a serious disease, she could not receive guests. Without a source of income to support her living in a high-end neighborhood, she had to move to a dilapidated low-rent apartment. Every day, there were all kinds of curses in various dialects outside the door. Children's cries, the sound of car horns downstairs, and all kinds of dirty and messy environment. It was simply a nightmare. What about now? She was still the beautiful young lady of the Qing family. Her previous life was like a nightmare. She swore that in this life, she would not let herself fall into that kind of situation again. Miss Cheng. A low voice interrupted Gu Xingyin's thoughts. Gu Xingyin raised her head. It was a strange man. She frowned slightly. This man's aura was too aggressive and made people unconsciously nervous. However, Gu Xingyin only frowned. She was the empress in her previous life. What kind of people had she not seen? This man was not enough to make her lose her composure. Yuan Su was a little surprised. When he was young, he had trained with his uncle who was in the army for a period of time. His aura had been honed from real bloodshed. Ordinary people would not be able to withstand it. He did not expect that this delicate little girl in front of him would not be affected at all. Yuan Su raised his eyebrows. It seemed that this Miss Cheng was not as innocent and harmless as she seemed on the surface. Hello, I'm Yuan Su. Yuan Su extended his hand. It turned out that he was Yuan Hang's brother, the young master of the Yuan Corporation. Gu Xingyin understood. Nice to meet you, Mr. Yuan. Gu Xingyin reached out and shook Yuan Su's hand. So slippery. This was Yuan Su's first thought. The warm touch in his hand made his heart flutter, as if he was holding a warm jade. No wonder the ancients said that jade was soft and fragrant. It turned out that such a woman really existed. The two of them did not talk much. They only exchanged a few words occasionally and just sat there quietly. The atmosphere was not awkward at all. Compared to the liveliness in the hall, there was a sense of tranquility. I should go out and give my speech. Yuan Su was a little reluctant to leave when he got up. Gu Xingyin got up to send him off out of politeness. However, she did not expect that her overly long skirt would restrict her movements. She twisted her leg and fell diagonally to the ground. Be careful. Gu Xingyin fell into a broad embrace. At the same time, a familiar lotus fragrance wafted into her nose. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.